TikTok time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. And with me now, got one of the legends of the UK, the apologist and polemicist, formerly known as Bob the Builder. What do you go by now? Just Bob?
Bob of Speaker's Corner is the title I go with. I tried to sound more adult and realistic than cartoonish. When it didn't look like it was going anywhere, I was happy with Bob the Builder, but now it's actually gone somewhere. I feel like I've got to have a more professional name.
Yeah, that'd be like going with like Blues Clues as your name or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm Thomas the Tank Engine. It's like, okay, it's not.
Exactly. Exactly. It works for a time, but at some point you've got to drop it, and try and give yourself a different rapport.
All right, everyone. So this was a couple months ago, wasn't it? Was it a couple months ago?
We weren't quick on getting part two together, but yeah, we did part one a couple of months ago on this, and yeah.
So a couple months ago, me, AP, and Bob went live, and Bob was breaking down what he thinks steps that the church needs to be taking and so on to deal with a lot of the problems that are going on in the UK and elsewhere. Sadly, since AP was there, he kept interrupting, and Bob didn't get to finish everything thanks to AP, but gladly, AP is out of the country right now. So
where is he?
He's in. He went to Israel.
He avoided me again.
Nope, took off. Went to Israel. So he's there. Tommy's there. A few other people are there.
They're having a get together. Having a little meeting.
Yep. So yeah, we can finally make some progress and get some things done without constantly being distracted by the Turkish terror, AP.
I miss you, AP. And when AP am I coming on your channel? It's been well over 2 years now. I'm just saying, bro. It's been a while since you came on my channel, and we talked about me coming on yours. So I'm just putting it out there.
Oh yeah, no, I'll remind him. AP would love to have you. He's just he's a Turk, so he's just constantly only thinking about himself.
Well, I tret him a little bit in London to introducing him with all of my friends from Speaker's Corner. So, it was a pleasure to meet him in person. It really was.
Hey, look at this. AP in Israel, Tommy Robinson in Israel. Where is Sir Wood? Yeah, AP didn't even bother asking me to go with him because he knew there was no scenario where I was going with him on another trip like this until we go over to Israel.
Why? Is he a bad travel companion? Is he a bad travel partner?
It may be better. It may be better because he's no longer an atheist, but he would go into like massive depression. I mean, we're over there. We're talking to family members of hostages and stuff like this, and AP would just get horribly depressed over stuff and would just not get out of bed. And here's the thing. I just thought he was being lazy, right? So I'm like, hey, come on, let's go to the Temple Mount. I want to record this video at the Temple Mount. He's like, just go without me, go without me. I was like, get out of bed, man. He's like, I can't go. Get up. And I'm thinking, I'm getting more and more enraged because I'm like, we got to record. We planned on recording all these videos, and you won't get out of bed. And I don't understand like being like
me and you, David. Me and you. We'll go and do some recording in Israel.
Oh, hey, I would totally go with you. Let's
do it. I would love it.
So here,
there you go, people.
So here's the
Wood and Bob's trip around Israel.
Yeah, here's the crazy part. See, if someone is like going into like a clinical depression, you don't get mad at them. That's a problem. If someone's just being lazy, you get really mad at them and stuff. So I'm sitting here thinking he's just being horribly lazy whenever I'm trying to do something. So I'm getting more and more enraged at him. And but he's actually just like he's having horrible bouts of depression where he can't even function and stuff. So I was getting more and more ticked off, and I'm like, I'm never going on a trip with you again. Ever. I would now, because I'd have to see, because he's a Christian. But yeah, it was kind of like, okay, you go do your trip. We'll see how it goes. See if you are able to actually function throughout an entire trip, and then you can. Then we can talk.
I hope both him and Tommy have a very safe trip. You know, Tommy's become a Christian, right?
Yeah, I saw him rocking a cross on his way out, and then who was it? Was it Maher Tusi? Someone said that he like fully converted in prison this last time.
That's what I've heard as well. That's what I've heard, and it would seem that he's serious about it. You know, as part of his trip to Israel, he wants to go around the holy sites of Christendom and, you know, visit the Temple of the Holy Sepulchre, and and hopefully he enriches himself and broadens himself on that. So,
you ever been there?
No, but I always said to myself that I would want to go on pilgrimage to Israel in 2033. Which now actually, you know, is looming. You can see it on the horizon. 2033. It's way over there on the horizon. And
I get it. Young, the 2,000 years. 2000
there you go.
Years.
You got it.
Nice.
You got it. And I'd entertain the idea of walking the whole way. You know, from the UK all the way to Israel, spending like a year on foot traveling there. I mean, now I wonder whether I could do that. I might have to go in like a disguise or something, but oh no, are we frozen a bit? Are you there?
Yeah, no, you're good.
I was good. No freezing on your side.
No, you froze a little bit, but we still heard your voice. You didn't. Your voice didn't. Yeah, your voice didn't disconnect.
I'll just try to sit statue-like, and then you won't tell whether I've frozen or not. But like I wanted to walk all the way there. And I still might go on a big pilgrimage and just walk the whole distance. I'm just curious about how it'll go when I get to Turkey. Mm-hmm. You know, and whether I'm exactly. Given the fact that they're keeping a list of people who've criticized or insulted Islam, and they want to have them arrested, and you know, I might have to skip Turkey and go the last part by boat.
Yeah, you can. You can sail around. Yeah, you can sail around there. Or just go down. Yeah,
proper Crusaders version that of a pilgrimage, isn't it? It's like we've got to skip Turkey.
Yeah, just go down to
can't walk through Turkey.
Yeah, go down to just go down to Greece, and I'm sure there's some boat you'll be able to catch in Greece to head over there.
Yeah,
head right there. But no, it is super cool because you know, you can read the Bible your entire life, but when you're actually like going around the Temple Mount and you're just walking over to the Garden of Gethsemane and then walking up the Mount of Olives, now when you read it in the Bible, you're actually like picturing it. You're actually picturing, oh, right over here. Oh yeah, Jesus walked right down there. Yeah. Oh, I know that route. I walked that same route and stuff. So
yeah.
And then like Capernaum, it's just it's small and it's just ruins now and stuff, but they still have the synagogue there. They have the foundation for the synagogue that was there. So you're like there and you're like, I'm like right where Jesus was, and I can walk right down to the water on the Sea of Galilee and stuff like this. So yeah, it's just for me. I mean, it's cool seeing all the places. For me, it's cool because like I don't know. I process it better when I can visualize everything. So yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Right. Shall we jump into this?
Yep. Yes, we should.
All right, then.
So why don't you tell everyone sort of the overall topic and then give kind of a quick recap of the stuff you covered before, and then take it right from there. And I'll interject with all my objections and to call you an Islamophobe.
Brilliant. Do feel free to push back where you feel we should push back, or to debate points or raise other ideas or whatever you want to say, really. So basically, I'm talking about what shape the church needs to be in to resist and reverse Islamization. What shape does the church have to be in to cope with the Ummah and to cope with the project of Islamization? And in part one that you can find on David's channel, you can find it on my channel. I talked about the first thing that we need to do is to reject liberal secular humanism, and that means to restructure the way that we frame ourselves in the world, away from the nation state and to within the church. and that we needed to cultivate a more fully Christian identity as part of that, and what that full Christian identity actually meant for us. And that from developing that Christian identity, an essential part of it would require for churches to work together in ecumenical sort of networks about what they're against, and to develop a Christian politique that's rooted from the Christian identity, that's focused on the persecuted church, that essentially strives towards a new Christendom. And that part of the problem that we face is that we've got a lot of cowardice in the church. And that cowardice in the church needs to be challenged. And one of the ways to challenge that is to recover this love of martyrdom, to recover the cult of martyrdom, as it were. And then also
hey, one second on that. 1 second on that.
Yeah.
Recapturing love of martyrdom, because you're talking about courage, and that's what I've been thinking for a long time. Like, you guys have there's one obstacle. It's just not being scared. I mean, what do? They call you names. They call you Islamophobes, and everyone backs down. Everyone's terrified of being called names and so on, and they'll actually like paralyze the population of an entire country. I mean, especially like in the UK. I mean, with the grooming gangs and so on, it was just, we don't want to be called Islamophobes. And you have like judges and social workers and police, and they're all so scared of being labeled a racist that they will let this keep on for tens of thousands of young girls. And they're so terrified of being called a name. I'm sitting there looking at it going, the only thing that's keeping this going is you're scared. If you just weren't scared, if you weren't scared of being called a name, you'd win. You just win. Just by taking away your fear. So when you were saying love of martyrdom, I was thinking like, not even necessarily to the point of being killed or something, but just get it through your head that if you're standing up for what's right, they might come after your reputation. They might come after your job. They might toss you in jail for saying the wrong things, especially in the UK. But get it through your head that that's okay, that it's okay to suffer these consequences for doing the right thing. And then it would just change everyone's attitude. Hey, I'm going to say the right thing. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it on social media. I'm going to do this. And okay, if you're going to lock me up for 3 years for doing that, I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I don't want that, but I'm okay with it, and I'm no longer scared. If you had enough people who are just, I'm not scared of what you can do to me anymore, I think that's it. That's all. That's kind of like the missing thing. Just get rid of the fear. Get rid of the fear. Be willing to accept the consequences, and they lose their power over you, because that's their power right now. We've got an entire population that's terrified of being called names or terrified of consequences. And this is how we control them. And okay, that's destroying you. That's destroying your entire country. And so what do you need? You need courage. You need courage and a willingness to accept consequences, and they lose their power. So Anyway, I just wanted to point out like the martyrdom. Yeah, the martyrdom. It's just, everyone watching, it's not, most of you are not going to be killed for anything that you would say or do or something like that, but you should be willing to face the consequences. And if you could, totally different world. Sorry about that.
And I think that, and just so you know, I'm using the guest chat between me and you just to make notes for my own reference. So don't feel you have to respond to those guest messages. But the one of the issues that we face is that the church is very middle class in the UK. And it is a very comfortable middle class. It's the boomer generation. The boomer generation dominate the church hierarchs and the church hierarchy. And they just come from a generation that was all about their own comfort and was all about their own happiness. And, that they don't have a worldview, partly because they've not been formed in the faith correctly. They just don't have a worldview that says carry your cross. They don't have a worldview that says suffer for Jesus. What they have a worldview of is let's all be nice. We should all be kind. and their vision of the church is just to be kind, and it's all about personal success. And so you've got a very limp-wristed kind of ecclesiology that comes from a generation of people born after the war, when it was all about glamour, when it was all about, maximizing your own experiences and wealth, because they'd grown up in the deprivations of the back end of World War II, certainly in the UK. But the boomer generation in America was also just born out at the end of the war, and it was all, that was when the West was at its peak, at the back end of its peak after the war, and so it was very much about comfort, and it wasn't until Vietnam that was sort of challenged in America. But the middle classdom of the church is part of why there's no love of the cross. There's no love of suffering for the kingdom. There's no love of martyrdom. Because if you are not frightened to die for Jesus, then what else do you have to fear? Once you lose that fear, everything else is inconsequential. And that's something that we desperately need. So to press on.
One second. Little side note here. Does Bob still have a YouTube channel? I know you do, and I know you appear on various. So what do you want me to actually put in the description box for anyone who wants to click?
Yes. So my channel is Bob of Speaker's Corner.
Okay.
It is not Soco Films. It is not Revelations 22. I'm not funded through these channels. I'm not supported through these channels. My only channel is Bob of Speaker's Corner.
All right. So I'm going to add Bob's main channel to the description for anyone who wants to click. All right. Continue, sir.
Yeah. So I've just noticed that my plug's not on, so let me just go and switch my plug on. Bear with us 1 second.
I'll take a couple super chats. Is that young Bob? He aged well.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, no, I clicked on a super chat. He said, "Is that young Bob? He aged well." Had young Bob on here. Had young Bob on here.
Yeah. Oh, bless his heart. Yeah, he's got himself in all kinds of trouble. But there's a man that's got courage, a lot of courage. So another thing that we need to cultivate, I mentioned in part one, is that we need to cultivate this warrior code of chivalry, that the church needs to throw off this erroneous doctrine of pacifism. The place where the church should be is a place where everybody goes. Christians don't start trouble, but you don't want to start trouble with Christians. And if we can reach that place in culture where people say that about us, then we've reached the right place, of a community that stands up for itself, and everybody knows that it stands up for itself, but at the same time is not a community that bullies others, and that is essentially chivalry. It's being gentle to the weak, and it's being strong in the defense of the weak and strong to the bully, and bullying the bully, and that kind of mentality.
Hey, did we talk about Plato's Republic last time?
We did. We did talk about Plato's Republic. You mentioned how Plato mentions this.
Yeah. I'll just recap that real quick for everyone. So, and I've mentioned that several times in live streams, but yeah, they get to a point where, so they're trying to formulate like the ideal city and so on. They get to their military, their soldiers. They want the most fearsome, feared soldiers on the planet, men who are raised from the time they're born. And they're like selected, like the people who are just like born aggressive and so on. They pick these guys and they craft them for their entire lives into becoming the ultimate soldiers. And then they start wondering, wait a minute, if we've created an army of the most fierce, aggressive soldiers on the planet, what is to stop them from just taking over and running the city themselves? And they said, no, we need these guys to be extremely loving and caring and protective over their own people. So we want them extremely hyper aggressive and violent towards enemies, but like super gentle and protective over their own people. Can these two natures go together? And they're ready to derail the entire the entire discussion and just give up, and then it gets mentioned. Wait a minute, those natures can go together, and we see it in the dog. You see it in dogs. You can have a dog that will, you can have a dog that will go right for the face of any intruder, but yet you can trust the dog with your baby. So they realize that it's possible, and they decide to raise up their fighters like that.
Yeah, and that's what we need. We need to take these very gentle men that we have in the church and turn them into the kind of men that can stick up for themselves, and stick up for their community. And then we also talked about the idea of living out your faith as a culture, living out fully, living out bombastically, living it out in such a way as that it takes up space, it absorbs time, it absorbs energy, it creates waves in the cultural matrix of a multicultural society, and that's kind of where we got up to, because there was a lot of what are these things where people pay you to read their comments, because I don't use them. What do you call them?
Super chats.
We had these super chats, and then obviously AP just every 2 minutes had something new to say about orthodoxy. I've got to mention orthodoxy.
Yeah, got to mention it. Got to talk about
orthodoxy.
it. Hey, what about
orthodoxy?
Hey,
what was that about orthodoxy?
You know, in my church, the Orthodox Church.
Yeah. We love the Orthodox Church, by the way. Just saying. But AP just anyway. So that's kind of where we got up to. So I'm going to kind of pick up from pick up from part 2. Now, I only skimmed through part 1 in preparation for this, because I didn't have time to go through the full 2 hours and 20 minutes. And so if I repeat a point, I just ask people's indulgence. If I recover a point that I've already spoke about, I ask for your indulgence. But I promise you, we will be bringing up new points. So I've touched upon it. My next point is the problem of the boomers. It is the problem of the boomer culture. The boomers were a generation of Christians who singularly failed. I mean, there was a lot of poor generations that failed from 1830s onwards right through to the present. But the boomer generation failed spectacularly to achieve anything for Christ. And whilst there were saints in the boomer generation, whilst there were exceptional Christians in the boomer generation, on the whole, they are the generation that drove the church over the cliff along with the rest of society. They went with it. They just went along with society, and their culture in which they were raised was marked by glamour, was marked by a desire for comfort, and you see this after wars, after World War One, you had a rising glamour and distraction. You see it again after World War Two, and obviously, this was a generation that in terms of the church, because obviously there were hard people, running and defending the nation state and fighting the Cold War. But in terms of the church, it was a generation that just didn't seem to have any sense of vision, had fully incorporated this idea that all the church should be is a charity. That all the church should be is maybe a prophetic voice that tries to be a conscience to society, but otherwise doesn't see the church as having a bigger role. And that's really poor ecclesiology. It's a really poor understanding of what the church is. Going back to identity, which I mentioned in part 1, if we are priests, our role is to sanctify and to offer up everything in the whole of creation unto God. So to take dominion over everything and to offer everything up to God through our role as priests by the discipling of the nations. And so we've got to, the boomer generation is filing out, the Lord is taking them to glory, and newer people are rising up. But the result is that for the moment, we're a bit clogged up with boomers and their very narrow very poor understanding of ecclesiology. And the quicker we break through their grip over the church and that very narrow understanding of ecclesiology, and the you're still there because everything's frozen.
Yep.
Yeah. The quicker we break out to have a spirituality that's more robust, the better.
Uh-oh. Huh. All right. Bob will call right back. Bob will call right back. We're wondering, we're actually wondering, because I've talked about it with AP, that years ago, you'd have like glitching and stuff during live streams. But now, even though we have way better equipment and way faster internet and everything else, it's way more issues. Like almost every time now when AP and I sign on for a live stream, one of us is like 5 to 7 seconds delayed behind the other and stuff. Anyway, turns out one of the possible causes is apparently being monitored, right? Like intelligence agencies spying on you for various things. And so we're wondering if that's an issue. Like they're eavesdropping on everything. Although you'd wonder why would they actually want to monitor what we're doing when they could just watch it. Anyway, let me check on Bob. He didn't sign right back in. I already told him he was fine, so he might not know that he is gone. Hope they didn't storm his place. Let's see. Where is Bob? Oh, he was trying to send me a message. Let's see. I'll take a couple super chats while he's typing a message. Oh, he says he's having a malfunction. And he said, hold on, he'll be right back. Okay, guys, Bob's going to be back in a second. He might be restarting his computer or something like that. Several years ago, I'll take a couple super chats while we're waiting. Several years ago, Kex released a UK parody song of Simon and Garfunkel's Mrs. Robinson called Mr. Robinson about Tommy Robinson. It's very good. And with no AP, we need music. And here's to you, Mr. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. Oh, man, Bob is on. I'm out. Not like the Al-Zut, though. Very rude. I'm just glad that Bob is not here, Daniel Apologetics, to hear your very Islamophobic joke. Bob and Mike Winger, what a collab. Ha, ha, ha. Good one, Joe. Yeah, let's all pick on the really cool guy and pretend he's a nerd. Do Muslims have a debatable case against Oriental Orthodox Christology versus Orthodox? I see most, if not all of you, take the Eastern Orthodox stance. Thank you. I don't know. Why don't you look up a discussion between Oriental Orthodox versus Muslims on Christology? I haven't seen that. Speaking of Islamophobes, gee, block. That's good. Muslims love the Ummah more than the truth. That is true. And yeah, and it's not even the Ummah. It's more like, as far as the Dawah fans, they love their Dawah guys more than the truth, more than Allah, more than Muhammad, more than anything. In Islam, they clearly love Muhammad more than anything else, generally, like since the beginning. But now they have like this cult of personality where they've rallied around Dawah guys. They've rallied around their Dawah guys and so on. That's become the center of their worship. Let me just respond to Bob real quick. He said he's going to have to restart. I'm just going to tell him no problem. I'm taking super chats till you come back. All right, there we go. So he knows he's good. Antoine says, if Christians weren't so weak and scary and believing in liberal false Christianity, in most cases you are the majority anyway, but you're too scared to stand up so you can actually see the numbers. Yeah, it's weird. I understand if everything's going well in your country, you know, it's best to try and get along, and being nice is usually good. If people are like destroying your country and stuff, and you're just worried about you're so worried about being portrayed as not nice that you will let any atrocity take place and you won't stop it because you've got some serious issues. It's become like, I mean, I'm trying to think like, I mean, it's like a mental disease or something like that. It's something really, really weird that you had all these generations. I mean, think about, Bob was talking about, you know, the war, World War II. I mean, you had guys like storming the beach at Normandy, just getting like completely gunned down, and they did it because they had to do it. And now you'll have guys, police officers, standing by doing nothing as tens of thousands of girls are horribly abused in their midst. But we can't be called names. It's really bad. Again, guys, Bob is right. Drop the fear, you win. D. Wood, Israel government minister Emikai Kikli wants to meet AP. I sent AP an email. AP doesn't see my tweets to him. I'll send him a text for you, Polpo. Trying to make a good Dawabunga PFP pick, a Ninja Turtle with Dawabunga. That's funny. A Ninja Turtle with two right hands, one leg. If anyone. Oh, wait. You're talking about you got the idea. You're like me. You come up with the idea, but you don't know how to make the stuff. That's actually a good one. Dawabunga, Ninja Turtle, two right hands, one leg. If anyone can do it, I'll love you forever. I'm positive there are plenty of people who can do that really quickly, because sometimes I blurt something out and then it's like their profile pics the next live stream, or even later in that same live stream, even 10 minutes later. Like when we started calling Orthodox lips, Orthodox Muslim Orthodox lips and stuff, like it was instant. It was instant. We started getting the pictures. Masab visited mosque in the tomb of patriarchs. Oh, you mean now is Masab over there too? Cause that's cool. Cause I think it was in California last time. Last time I knew where he was. There are a lot of people over there right now. There are a lot of interesting people. They should be getting some good, some awesome video footage and stuff. I know AP had a ton of stuff lined up. It's going to be there 2 weeks. It's crazy. Israeli reporter poses as a sheikh, goes to a few places and exposes Islam. Unfortunately, the documentary doesn't have English subs, but I did translate the intro. I can send it if you're interested. Israeli reporter poses as a sheikh, goes to a few places and exposes Islam. That sounds funny. We might need an English version of that. Oh yeah, Bob messaged me again, said his computer seems to be having serious issue. We were actually talking about that beforehand. He was saying, hey, I'm having serious computer problems. And I said, well, you look fine right now, so let's just jump in. Anyway, we'll give him time. He says he's working on it. Let's see. Allah's punishment got Bob. Yeah, they got Bob. It is funny because we were talking right beforehand about possible causes, and it's like, okay, if intelligence agencies actually like hack into your stuff to monitor what you're doing, that can lead to all sorts of problems. So, I mean, computer problems can just be computer problems. And here in the U.S., our government agencies tend to be mostly on the correct side. In other words, they're trying to deal with terrorist threats and things like that. And I said this because several years ago, like the FBI showed up at my door to tell me that there were credible death threats online against me. So it was more than just the random guys running their mouths about it, what they're going to do to me, like in the comment section or something like that. It was actually in chat rooms planning to brutally murder me or something like that. So the FBI shows up at my door, tells me there are credible death threats online, and that they have to inform me of them and give me their information in case I hear anything myself. Then I can contact them directly. And the FBI office was like a couple miles away from my house, so they're saying, "Hey, I'll just contact them directly," and so on. And I was like, this was right after Muhammad Hijab was threatening everyone's wives, and I took a bite out of the Qur'an, and then I started Qur'anagami. And so I'm talking to the FBI. They're like, and sir, they're credible death threats. And I was like, hey, they started it, man, because they were being a real jerk, and they're going after people's wives. So in response to that, and he goes, let me stop you right there, sir. We are not here to judge you based on what you do with your constitutionally protected freedom of speech. We're here to inform you that there are credible death threats against you. And so anyway, I love that. I love that. We're here to protect you. We're not here to mess with you. We're not here to silence you. We're not here to punish you. We're here for your good. We're here to protect you. I love it when they're like that. In the UK, where Bob is, complete reversal. They're there to silence and crush and destroy you. And so, yeah, it would not surprise me. And you remember, I mean, Tommy was just going to trial just because he gets back from a place. I say, give us your password to your phone. He's like, no. And they charge him with terrorism. They charge him with terrorism for not giving his password to his phone. What do they want with his phone? They want to go through his phone and find everything and every message he sent to everyone else and everything everyone else said to him and stuff. He's like, no. I mean, yeah, I'm like that too. You could lock me up for 5 years. I would not give you my password to my phone just for the principle. There's nothing. I mean, I can't think of anything that's really on there or something like that. But I mean, think about that. If you're asking a man for his phone, like, what are you gonna be looking at, like his text messages back and forth to like his wife and stuff like that? That's some creepy stuff. That's all. You are asking for some seriously private information here. And in the UK, they'll just demand that. We want to go through your phone, look up everything you've ever said. So what are the odds if these guys are actually like hacking into people's computers and stuff to monitor what they're doing for people like Bob and all these guys? Pretty creepy stuff. Anyway, that's a possible cause of the technical issues whenever this stuff happens. Allah's punishment got Bob. Yes, they got him. They got Bob. Bob the Builder, can he fix it? Dial-up tones. It's the djinn. David, what was your escape plan after attempting to unalive your dad? Why did you get busted? There wasn't, what do you mean like escape plan? Like I was going to disappear or something like that? Yeah. I attacked my dad in Virginia. This was early Thanksgiving morning. And then I drove to West Virginia, where most of the rest of my family was meeting for Thanksgiving. And I was just going to go there and have Thanksgiving dinner with my family. My dad survived. My dad survived the attack. And so that's what happened. I keep seeing Palestine flags and anti-Israel signs at these so-called No Kings protests. How stupid can people be? None protest Saudi monarchy. Yeah, what is that No Kings? There are kings all over the place. What you really mean is you don't like Trump. So I don't know why you're calling it No Kings. Just complain about Trump, right? Was Giant DOC's live with you and Chris from last night copyright struck? Can't find it anywhere. Yes, and it was totally bogus. So Christian Gadfly, he's been on with me a couple times, but yeah, he's actually a lawyer. So yeah, he's actually contacting YouTube. They're more inclined to do something quickly if a lawyer is actually contacting them and so on. So yeah, it was totally bogus. It sucks, guys, because we were having an awesome discussion. We had Muslims calling in, and some of the Muslims were like very reasonable, like listening. And one of them was like apologizing for getting things wrong. She's like, go over here. And we're like, okay, let's read it. So, oh, okay, yeah, I was wrong about that. So that's actually cool. Like, And I had to tell him, like, there's no shame in we're all wrong. Every last one of us has been wrong tons of times. And some people can't acknowledge it when they're wrong. And you keep acknowledging it when you're wrong. And we respect that. And so we're having an awesome discussion. And here's what sucks. We're talking about Yemenite. So he's got a channel. I forget what his whole entire channel name is, but he goes by Yemenite something. But we were talking about Yemenite, and he had just told people to go around to videos, and he said, instead of debating, just try and get them shut down. Try and get them shut down. Flag them for hate speech and stuff like this. So may have been someone following Yemenite's advice and just getting a live stream shut down. Just sucks that YouTube doesn't protect channels better than that. Kind of a garbage system. Kind of a garbage system. You and Bob have helped me learn a lot about Islam and strengthen my faith in Jesus. Awesome. That's cool stuff. All right, guys. So Bob is apparently rebooting everything. We'll wait a few more if we need to postpone this until he's able to figure out everything. Then we'll do that. All right, guys. What do you want to talk about? I'm over here in the chat. Let's see. I'm seeing some comments, but I don't know what happened before, so I don't know what some of this is about. Let's see. Pray for Bob's internet. Yeah, this seems like he said it's a computer problem. We'll see. Oh, here we go. Yeah, someone's asking, where's Robert? Because I said I'd be on live with Robert today. I'm going to be live with Robert at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Although I might message him and ask if he wants to go a little earlier, because he does go to sleep earlier than the rest of us. But yeah, this is what we'll be talking about tonight with Robert Spencer. Robert just came out with a book on Zohran Mamdani. So Robert did all the research. We want everyone to have all the information they need on Mamdani. Skynet here says Mamdani has never had a job in his life. Well, what are you talking about? He was a rapper. Guys, if you want to hear the worst thing you've ever heard in your entire life, listen to one of Zohran Mamdani's rap songs. I'm not kidding. Like, you could take the worst, most terrible rap song you've ever heard in your life. You can go back to 1983, where people were just like trying to figure out how to do rap back then. You have never heard anything as awful and terrible as Mamdani's rap. It was really, 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 really bad. But yeah, we'll be talking about Mamdani later. Catherine here says, live was struck by Mr. Sling. Yeah, Mr. Sling. And then I went live on my channel after that, and Mr. Sling came over and ran his mouth and stuff like that about how he got their channel blocked. I mean, how he got their live stream taken down. Total cowards. I said at the beginning of my live stream last night, these are completely different levels, but it's the same principle. Like, I compared it to Charlie Kirk. Like, Charlie Kirk shows up to a campus, sits down. He's got a microphone, and there's a microphone set up. And anyone who wants to challenge him on anything can step up to the microphone and argue against him, refute him, bring forth their evidence, and so on. But people decide to shoot him instead. You shoot someone instead of doing that. And I was just thinking about that. It's like we literally have a live call-in show where anyone who wants to say we're wrong can call in and tell us we're wrong. And Muslims were doing that. Muslims were calling in, trying to show that we're wrong. But that's not enough. You actually have to just shut us down. In other words, there are people, and it's online and it's out here in the real world, who don't even want the discussion. That even having the discussion is too much. Even having a debate is too much. You can't even allow that. You have to stop it by any means necessary. If that involves killing someone, then you kill them. If that involves fake copyright strikes, you do that and stuff. But There are some people who don't even want the discussion to proceed. And I'm just thinking, like, if you are so desperate to not allow the discussion to proceed that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the debate or the discussion never happens, how confident are you in your position? How confident are you that you have the truth on your side if you do not think that you can possibly win an actual debate or discussion? In other words, like, you seem like a total coward. You seem like a total coward. If I say, hey, here's my position. If you disagree with me, call in and refute me, or step up to the mic and refute me. And you say, no, I'll have to kill you, or I'll have to silence you, or have to do this or that. It's like, you are a serious coward. Weird stuff. Bob says, third attempt at a reboot. I'm going to message him. And I'm just going to tell him it's fine if things aren't working, he wants to reschedule. So just 1 second while I message him. We can... Okay, he said he's going to try and get it fixed in the next couple minutes, and that if it doesn't work, we'll just reschedule. So sounds like we're good. So we'll find out. And again, guys, well, I'll be live. I'll be live tonight. So he's gonna take one more crack at restarting his system and see if that works. And if that doesn't work, then we'll reschedule. Weasel Tactics. Hey, who? Oh, Yemenite Front. Is that it? Is that his channel? Yemenite Front? Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'm thinking about actually going to YouTube. Here's the thing. I don't like complaining about it. I really don't. I've only contacted, I mean, apart from myself, I will contact like YouTube and X or something like this if they've taken something down and, given me a false strike or something like that. I'll talk to them then. To my recollection, I've only actually contacted anyone to complain about something, as far as I recall, once ever. I'm trying to think. I've never complained about any death threats or anything like that. I think the only thing I've ever complained about is when they doxed someone. And I actually sent them a message. I say, this person is doxing this other person, posting their home address and stuff like this, trying to get them killed. And so that's the only, so I don't even like the idea of contacting YouTube, but I've actually thinking of that. I mean, if he has a video where he's advising Muslims to just file false complaints about people. And I'm guessing that if that's not against the rules, it should be against the rules, but still, I don't like calling it. Anyway, if anyone wants to go to his live stream, it's the live stream where he was saying, it's the live stream that's titled something about why Dawah's failing, why Dawah isn't working and stuff anymore. And I haven't watched that. I'm guessing it's because everyone has to do Dawah like me. But if you listen to Yemenite, he's saying don't engage with these guys and so on. Don't debate these guys. Don't engage with them. Just flag their stuff and complain about hate speech to get their stuff taken down. Anyway. If anyone wants to complain about something, that would be something to complain about. I don't think I can actually bring myself to actually try contacting YouTube about stuff like that. I still operate under prison rules where it's kind of like snitching. It's kind of like running to the authorities. Hey, guess what this guy's doing? So yeah, prison affects you for life, ladies and gentlemen. Prison has rules against snitching and stuff like that. But for those of you who haven't been to prison, if you wanted to like complain about, go find that clip. And if there's a way, again, I don't know if it's against the rules, but I mean, it seems like it should, right? Because you're saying, hey, everyone go out and just file false flag videos to try and get them taken down. That's some slimy, cowardly stuff. I mean, it's pathetic. Let's see. All right, take a couple more super chats while we wait. Okay, when will your book come out approximately? That depends. I mean, at first I just crushed it and had between a half and 2/3, and then I haven't touched it in weeks now. And so, and there's no chance that I'm going to get anything done this week. This week, hey, it's actually cool, guys. You know, we're talking about that series we're recording with Turning Point on Islam. So me, IP, and God Logic, me, Inspiring Philosophy, and God Logic are about to travel to Turning Point Studio for the first batch of videos, in their Islam series. So that's this week, and then I'm speaking somewhere else later in the week. So yeah, this week's totally swamped. I'm trying to think of when I can finish, because it's got to be finished. We don't want this. It's got to be. Let me put it this way: it's got to be finished this year. I mean, absolutely, like before 2026, because we have other stuff going on. Let's see if we got Bob back. Let's see.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I want to apologize to everybody for that. I'm very sorry. I don't know what the life expectancy is of computers. My computer's 6 years old, and it seems to be getting temperamental in middle-aged. I guess, you know, say the average lifespan of a computer is 10 years, then it's in middle age. It just seems to be either that or it's all the spyware that the British state has put on it. It's just killing it.
I was talking about that. While you were gone, that here in the U.S., you know, they may be watching various things, but they overall lean towards good intentions, and that I was in the UK, they're massively on the side of bad intention. And bad intentions. I was talking about them like telling Tommy to hand over his password for his phone so they can read all his messages to everyone, to his family, his wife, everything. And he's just like, no. And then, okay, we're going to charge you with terrorism. Like, these are people who are on a really, really bad, evil side of things. These are exactly the sort of people who would like put spyware into every Islamophobe's computer and things like that.
Exactly.
So if you're listening to UK agencies, you guys suck, man. You guys suck. And I'm glad we dumped your tea in our harbor.
Don't bring the tea into it, bro. Don't bring the tea into it. It's a very sensitive topic. The loss of tea. Right. So are we good?
Hey. Yeah, we are. I'll just point out two things. One, if you have another breakdown or something like that, and you're having a problem, we can just reschedule for a different time. That's no problem.
Yeah.
And if you have an old computer, you got a lot of fans out there. Do it the D Wood way. Tell people what you need. Hey, I want this computer. I need this computer so I can continue doing shows and stuff. Here's what it costs, and everyone can chip in who wants to see you.
Yeah, I think paying for a new computer is probably on the cards, to be fair. Right. Shall I pick up straight from where I left off?
Yep.
So the problem with the sort of middle classdom of the church is it doesn't have the culture of sacrifice. It doesn't want to make a sacrifice. It wants a comfortable life. And because it wants a comfortable life, it's not willing to do the things that are necessary to do to resist Islamization. And that comes from the boomer generation. They are integrated, they are well-adapted citizens, they have benefited from society. They think society is working, and they don't think that there is any problem to be tackled or to be challenged.
Do you guys have prosperity theology over there?
We do, but not in any big way. It's here, but it's not huge.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because so I became a Christian in jail, and then I started in prison. I started just there are all these ministries that send out free Bible studies and stuff. So I was just signing up for every free Bible study I could. But keep in mind, I didn't know anything about Christianity. So I was almost a blank slate. So I have zero discernment and so on. And so I just start doing all these different Bible studies from all these different groups. And it was the same thing every time. It would be I'd be reading something and I'd be like, I read that verse. That's not what that meant. And so I was reading the prosperity some of the prosperity stuff. It was Kenneth Copeland Ministries was sending stuff, and I was reading the book they sent me, and it was talking about the parable of the sower, and it was saying how this is about sowing your money to reap the harvest, a 100-fold harvest, and stuff like that. And I was going, I mean, I only read that a couple times, but what? Didn't Jesus himself explain what that one is about? Didn't he say it was about the word? Let me go check that.
Yeah.
And I go back and I was like, wait, he explained what that was. You guys are saying, oh, I don't like this stuff. This stuff, you're trying to turn everything into something about money. But when I was reading that stuff back then about how God's just going to make you prosper financially and all this stuff if you're actually faithful to him, if you're not prospering financially and in all these other ways and with a big house and stuff, it's because you just don't have the right faith and stuff. And I'm just thinking, you guys are like setting up a disaster here. You're making it so that people are not going to be able to endure anything that happens if things go bad, and they're going to think they're being punished because they're bad.
And there's a softer version of that across the West, which is this idea that we can just pray every problem away. You know, so it always gets me in trouble when I say this, but prayer is not the solution. It is not going to fix everything, but that's embedded in middle class culture. It's kind of like we whatever the problem is, we can just pray about it, and so there is that middle classdom to the churches that we have to break through. We have to break the grip of the boomers on the church hierarchy, because the boomers are holding the church back. Because they are so enmeshed, so embedded, so dependent upon a kind of boxed-in Christianity that they can't imagine a Christianity that's more robust, more forceful, more energetic, more diverse. They just want bums on pews, pay your tithe, receive your sacraments, go away, rinse and repeat week after week. And a church that doesn't fit that description is a church that doesn't fit with them. And so that is part of the challenge of what it is to respond to Islam, is to get rid of the things clogging up or bypass the things that are clogging up the church's response. And the boomer generation and middle class Christianity is part of what is clogging up the arteries of the church in terms of responding to the challenges that it faces.
Let me just go ahead and say it as the Joker from the 1988 Batman would say it. Sounds like you're saying the church needs an enema here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about you boomers. We're saying you boomers and your crap ideas need to
have failed. They failed. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's lots of godly people amongst the boomers, insofar as they were taught how to be godly, and there's lots of saints amongst the boomers. I have no doubt, and good Christians amongst the boomers. You know, but as a generation, apart from a few, they have largely failed as a generation. And we need to recognize that as the generations that we're picking up their mess, and that's where we're dealing. So it's about recognizing where we are in history.
Just a little side note, because I'm guessing a lot of the things that affected Christians actually played a role among non-Christians, or getting people to even leave Christianity, because I did a live stream either earlier this year or at the end of the last year with someone in the UK who did a poll, and you could have asked anyone. I don't know if you guys would have thought about this differently, but you could have asked anyone over here, like, hey, if we do a poll of religious beliefs and so on by different age groups, what's it going to show? And like any one of us would have said, oh, the oldest generation, they would be like the most Christian. And then as you get younger, they would become progressively more atheistic. We would have all said that. And yet the study showed the exact reverse. It was the oldest generation. It was the oldest two generations, the 45 to 54s, the 55 to 64s, and so on, that were the most atheistic. And the youngest generation, the 18 to 24, they were the least atheistic and the most open to hearing someone share what they believe about their
Yeah,
religion and so on. And so
yeah,
I'm guessing if that's connected, if that whole boomer thing was just a big disaster all around.
yeah. And we did talk about this in part one, so that's why I'm not going to get back into that conversation, because we did
Right.
have a good chew on that piece of
Right.
cud in part one. So if it's okay, I'll move on to the next
All right.
point, which is that as Christians we need to organize ourselves economically. The thing is, the Christian church, if you weigh it up as an economic unit, we are in possession of billions of pounds, billions of dollars. We are a huge demographic with a lot of economic clout, but we've never weaponized our economic clout. And that's something that we need to do. The most powerful weapon that any Christian has, and this is going to upset all the boomers who will want to say the most powerful weapon is prayer. But the most powerful weapon that any Christian has, apart from a gun, is their pound or their dollar, and what they do with that pound or dollar. And we need to create a Christian economy that is going to free our community. Because if you are employed by Christians and you work for committed Christians, you're not going to lose your job for posting the wrong thing on social media or for going out and standing up for what's right. Because then when they come after you through your employer will go, yeah, I agree. And also, furthermore, if Christians use their economy, they can begin to influence the high street. So let me give you a couple of examples. There's a Christian bookshop here in London called Agape, the Agape Centre, which is a Christian bookshop slash cafe. That is a bookshop that's owned by some Christians, and the Muslim community have tried to shut it down because the bookshop is run by Arab Christians, and some members of the Muslim community have tried to shut down that bookshop by buying the entire building just so they can close the bookshop down. But the owners of the building are themselves Christians. So the people that own the building are Christians, and the people that own the bookshop cafe are Christians. And because the owners were Christians and they knew what was going to happen if they sold it to Muslim buyers, they've refused. And so the Christian cafe bookshop is still open. It still has a presence on the high street. Now, that's a very small example of what I'm talking about. Another example would be that there's a Muslim multimillionaire who in London has just bought a piece of prime real estate slap bang right in the middle of London called the Trocadero. And it's going to get turned into a mega mosque. And that is in Leicester Square, next to Soho. It is right in the very heart of London. You're going to have a mosque, an Islamic missionary centre. That's because this Muslim millionaire is using his money to advance the cause of Islam. Christians need to use their money more wisely than just obsessing about stones and mortar of the church. I'll give you another example. In my home city, there was a church that was being sold. And there was a debate within the church about what to do with it. And I was suggesting that we turn it into a missionary training centre, equipped with accommodation, gymnasium, teaching classes, a cafe, and the gym and the cafe would pay for it. And then there'd be these missionaries coming from all around the world. They'd be trained up, and then they'd be going into the city doing evangelism and bringing people into the church on a year in, year out basis, and then taking what they learned around the world back to wherever they'd come from around the world. And there was another group within the church that just wanted to turn it into another chapel, into another church. Obviously, this is within the Catholic tradition. That's where I'm seated in the Anglo-Catholic tradition, and so they wanted to turn it just into another chapel, despite the fact there was already chapels around. And so they've turned it into another chapel, but it's just, it's not really doing anything. It's just another church amongst many churches. But it's that lack of imagination about what to do with resources that's holding the church back. Now, how does this apply to reversing Islamization? Well, we've got to use the power of boycott. We've got to use the power of, right, well, we've got to be vocal about what we want to see in the economy. If you buy halal meat, you're buying from an industry that funds dawah, because halal meat funds zakat, zakat funds dawah, dawah funds the building of mosques, dawah funds Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawah. Like they're funded through zakat donations.
Oh, and
So
everyone, I can verify that no longer allowed in the UK now. But when I was in the UK, I can verify when we're all trying to decide where to eat, Bob is the one's like, I'm not eating there. Not eating there. It's halal. So
yeah,
not funding them.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a no-brainer. But the point is, it's not just that. It's in countless ways we've got to fight the economic war. So after the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk, there was this pushback against all these people celebrating his martyrdom, where people went after their employers, went after their jobs. And this is the kind of economic war that the church needs to be fighting relentlessly. We need to be funding Christians who are owning businesses. Christian businesses need to be working with other Christian businesses. Christian businesses, if they are building up, need to be employing Christians. That then frees Christians to be more socio-cultural warriors in society, because they're not worried about losing the job. The businesses get richer so they can fund more ministries, fund the churches. The churches and the ministries are better funded so they can then go on and do more themselves. So we need to keep the Christian pound within the Christian world. And we need to find ways of doing that. And we also need to find ways of starving out our ideological opponents of cash. And this is one of the easiest ways that you can get involved in de-Islamization. Because then we could reach a point, where we start, that we start shaping the high street, that we're in the position that we're buying that piece of real estate so it can't be turned into a mosque, or where we end up in a situation where we end up fashioning the high street so that, rather than us looking for a place where you don't buy halal, Muslims are looking for a place where you do buy halal. It's where we create an environment that those that are aiding and facilitating the destruction of the West suddenly find themselves that nobody's going to their LGBTQ, silent P kind of coffee shops, And we begin to change the culture through economy, because obviously politicians need funding for their campaigns. And if big funders are Christians, then it influences them. So what happened with Reform is Yusuf, who is at least a nominally Muslim, seems to have gained himself some influence within the Reform Party that coincided with a very large donation to the Reform Party. And that has taken the teeth out of the Reform Party for a lot of people. But the point is, he's just playing the game of economics. Christians are not particularly imaginative or show particularly solidarity financially with other Christians, and this is something that we need to change as a culture. So that's one of the next points.
And so I guess the principle here would be, in the U.S., got a Christian majority. In the U.K., not so much, as far as I can recall correctly, but you still have tons and tons of Christians. And if even a bunch, it wouldn't even need to be all Christians, but if even a sizable portion of Christians were on the same page, they would have massively more influence and impact on society and the culture just with economics.
Yes, that's it. And I mean, for what it's worth, I've launched an app called Christian Economy, the idea of which is to network Christians, Christians who want to work for Christians, and Christians who want to trade with Christians, and people that want to buy from Christian businesses, and that's the idea of it, But it's that kind of organization, and within that app, you can even say which companies we're going to boycott. And you've seen the power in America of the power of boycott. What was the beer that went woke and then nearly went broke?
Which
Bud
one?
Light, was it? Bud Light, I think it was.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing, though. Even though companies do that all the time, Christians seem to be. They don't have a lot of staying power. You know what I mean? They'll freak out over something very, very briefly, and then a month later, not care about it anymore. So everyone knows basically, okay, everyone's mad at my company right now. Stock prices are dropping, but it'll all come back around.
Yes, that's absolutely true, and that again, I think, goes back to boomer comfort, middle class kind of Christianity. It's kind of like, that lack of staying power. So I'll move on. You've mentioned about the fact that as Christians, we are a minority here in the UK, and I God forbid, but it might end up being like that in America. But in the UK, we definitely are a minority. The one move that we can make that will help us with all of our challenges, not just the challenge of Islamization, but all of our challenges that we face as Christians, is to consolidate geographically, is to consolidate into spaces, geographical spaces, where we then become the majority population. Because when we become the majority population, if we then apply that to culture, the culture starts to look Christian. If we apply that to economics, the economy starts to look Christian. Every business will close down on a Sunday because Christians refuse to go in on a Sunday. So there's no point opening up your whatever. If our children are filling up the schools and our parents are filling up the educational boards, then we have an influence over how and what our children get taught. If we're the biggest electorate, then it's from within our own community that we end up electing local councillors, local MPs, or whatever the equivalents are in America and Canada. If we are the majority population, the police recruit from us. And so you're combining this with everything we talked about in part one of this two-parter. And the Benedict community will then magnify the impact of the Christian community, as well as giving it sustainability. Now, sustainability, because it also just makes it easier for Christians to marry and find one another to marry, which is something I'm going to come on to as one of my points. And you see the Benedict community working in the UK. You go to Tower Hamlets, which is a majority Muslim area of London, and Islam clearly dominates everything about the socio-economic and political life of Tower Hamlets. In Birmingham, Muslims have just flexed their muscles to the British state, and the British state are back down, and all Jews have just been barred. All Jews from Israel have just been barred from entering Birmingham for a football match. And that is, a total flex by the Muslim community and the middle
even the politicians. England. I've seen Muslim MPs just bragging about it on Twitter. How this is a great thing that they've been able to. It's just like, gosh, I mean, they're bragging about it. So,
but that's the power of the Benedict option. Muslims make up the majority in Birmingham. They make up the majority in Tower Hamlets, and so they have control because they are the majority. And in a Western liberal secular democracy, society bends around whatever the majority wants. And so you've got this majority that is, determining the local structure of society. Now, if it works for Muslims, it can also work for Christians. And this is why we should adopt it. because it's the one move that we can make that will help us in all of our challenges. Now, the thing is, any organization, any business, any army that ends up being spread too thin will naturally consolidate. The church has to do that as well. It needs to consolidate. Now, I'm not a fantasist. I don't think that you're going to be able to set up a Benedict option of Roman Catholics and Calvinist, Baptists setting up a Benedict community together. That just won't work. But what can happen is, the Roman Catholics set up their Benedict community, the Baptists set up theirs, the Calvinists set up theirs, the Lutherans set up theirs, the Pentecostals set up theirs, the Orthodox set up theirs, preferably separate from the Ukrainian Orthodox, and then they each go about transforming their society to look like what a Christian society would like according to their denomination, and then just let the best church win. But the Benedict community, it is better than this parish system that we've got that is failing everywhere. It is better than these kind of and mega churches are an example of consolidation. I give you an example. If you look just at Catholic churches in the UK, churches where there are more than one priest do better than churches where there's just one priest. What's that telling you? You've got a concentration of resources, and so you can do more. So you look at churches attached to monasteries, or you look at oratories, like the Brompton Oratory or the Birmingham Oratory. Those churches are healthier and more thriving. You look at cathedrals. Cathedrals of the Church of England do better. Why? Because they've got more clergy. A concentration of resources results in more being able to be done. And the more you do, the more you're then able to do. As both me and you know, like we both started from zero and have reached a point where we're doing lots more because of the amount of effort we've put into things. But imagine if there was like a little colony of like apologists, all within one city, amidst a general Christian city, amidst a general Christian populace. How much more could we do? And so the Benedict option is absolutely important in this struggle. And just to prove that it does work in terms of conflict situations, go and look at Northern Ireland. Benedict communities, the Benedict option, have sustained both the loyalist and the Republican communities in that struggle because they both adopted the Benedict option. In other words, in sociological trumps, the Benedict option trumps every other card and can only be matched by another Benedict option. Whereas if you look at the churches in Muslim Benedict communities, they can nibble around the edges, but ultimately over time they close because the natural population of that church either moves away or dies. A few might convert to Islam. And even if the church makes a few converts from Islam, which I'm sure they would, those number of converts would never be big enough and never be able to be sustained in a Muslim majority to sustain that parish church. And so the parish system doesn't work. I've lost you. Nope, can't hear you.
That was on me. I muted myself.
Oh, good. It's not my computer.
Not your computer. Not your computer.
Not my computer this time. Go on.
Oh, so as far as the Benedict option, you're getting that from, is that from Rod Dreher's book?
Yeah, Rob Dreher's book. But Rob Dreher, there's a better version of the Benedict option. Rob Dreher's description of the Benedict option is a bit limp-wristed. It's like, let's go away and cower in, the east coast of Ireland, the west coast of Ireland, and hope people don't notice us. That's not an effective Benedict option. It's got to be a Benedict option that is outward facing. And Rob Dreher's understanding of the Benedict option is maybe like, 30 families go and settle in. I'm talking about hundreds of families, and then hundreds or maybe even thousands of people all gathering into one place. Not tens, but hundreds or thousands.
And then there's Alistair McIntyre, who had a book called After Virtue.
Yeah,
Who argued something similar. Yeah.
So that would be part of the response. I realize you've kind of had to tread water and talk a lot while I've been out. So like this is one of those areas that people, if they can see how it would work, I think a lot more people would be in favor of it. And I think the way to start getting those Benedict options, there's a number of avenues to move towards them. Firstly, is everybody cluster around the monasteries and the convents, cluster around where there's already a spiritual community and go and cluster around that. Another option is that you just really build alliances where you are. So where you live, David, you build alliances amongst all the local Christians in that area, and with the deliberate intention of Christianizing society, which goes back to what we talked about in part 1, about this idea of building a Christian civilization. So that's another way you could do it. Or the third option, which is probably the toughest, is you've got to convince enough people to pull together enough resources that you go in and you move into a place. Maybe target one of the poorest areas in your country where real estate is going to be cheap. Everybody moves there, you take over, and then you build it up into something beautiful. So there are 3 ways, I think, that you could start to form Benedict options. Monasteries already have the land and the resources. They just need to have the vision to be the heart of Benedict communities, Benedict-style communities.
You don't have it's not exactly what you're talking about, but you have sort of similar, well, I can't even call it a similar idea. It doesn't seem to be based on any particular idea, but like when things are going terribly in California, people start leaving California and going to like Texas or Tennessee because like everything, the school boards, everything's like going completely insane. And people are just like, I don't want to raise my family out here. I'm going to go to some place where it's actually going to be better for my family to not be raised in this complete insanity and stuff. And so you get this, there's kind of exodus. There's an exodus from various parts of the country to go to other parts of the country right now.
Yeah. And but if Christians are a bit more deliberate about that, rather than making the choice because we don't like the Democrats, but rather because we want to build a Christian colony. For instance, just again to prove that this Benedict option works, look at Dearborn, Michigan. You had that experience of going to Dearborn, Michigan. Excuse me, I'm going to try and get the attention of my beautiful wife, who's off camera. Could you reheat that or make a fresh one? Thank you. I have a wife now, so.
Nice.
So. If you look at what happened when you went to Dearborn, Michigan, they didn't want you handing out pamphlets, so they outlawed all pamphlets. But then the police officers only imposed that on non-Muslims. Mm-hmm. That's an example of the Benedict option and how it works. And now look at what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan. Mm-hmm. You've got is it a councillor, a local councillor, turning around and saying, "Someone, you don't belong in this town."
That was the mayor.
That was the mayor turning around to some non-Muslim and saying, "You don't belong in this town." Mm-hmm. Like I'm sorry.
And by the way, I don't know the guy who was complaining. The guy was complaining because he said, "Hey, we're naming a street after a guy who openly supported terrorists. We should not be doing that." I don't know that guy, but I know people who know that guy, and they're saying that guy's like extremely nice and loving. He's the guy who's like, "Hey guys, we shouldn't be hating Muslims or being afraid of them. We should love them and be preaching the gospel to them." So he's like very, very nice, but he's just like, hey, wait a minute, why? I live in this city. Why are we naming a we naming a street after a guy who openly supported terrorism? And then it's, you don't belong here. And the mayor even said, I will have a parade. That it's like they're regarding this guy as completely evil, and apparently he's like the super nice, loving guy there.
Yeah, and so my point is, the American Constitution and liberal secular humanism can't stop Islamization. But if the Benedict option helps in Islamization, it will help in Christianization. And a proof of that is, look at the Amish. You know, they're taking over Pennsylvania. And they're not doing it by anything other than having buggy races and lots of children. You know, like, and so the Benedict option works. It just works. And the church is going to, one way or another, adopt the Benedict option. It will either do it because it will listen to people like me and Rob Dreher, who are trying to say, hey, guys, sociologically, this is the trump card. Let's use it while we've still got the numbers and the resources to have an impact with it. Or it will use it as a survival technique, like the Christians in Egypt and Syria are using it as a survival technique. So make your choice, Christians, because one way or another, you are adopting the Benedict option. But do you want to do it as a survival option, or do you want to do it as a springboard to getting the church back on the front foot? You know? Okay, so that's that one. The next issue that we've, as Christians, that we've got to adopt in terms of reversing Islamization is, we've just got to learn to have children again.
That's a huge one. I've even seen it. It's weird, but Elon Musk now for the past 2 years have been pushing that one really hard, and it's like he's not. He's not a Christian or anything. He just understands, like, this is world changing. The people who are having kids, guess what?
They own the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the Muslims have known this now, have been onto this for a good couple of decades. They clicked onto this decades ago. And again, because we have these boomer leaders who are sightless, visionless, imaginativeless, kind of uncharismatic, ineffective in everything that they do. They have allowed the demographic collapse of the church, and they haven't even begun to try to deal with it. The church, I gave this stat last time. The average age of a Christian is 51 in this country. How did it get to that? We're the most we are the pro-life, pro-marriage community. We're the pro-family community. We're the pro-life community, and yet we aren't having marriages and we aren't having children. And something has gone desperately, desperately wrong in the church. And there is no future for the church if it doesn't have children. I'm sorry to all of you guys out there, brothers and sisters out there, who think that we can just change everything by preaching the gospel on the street corner. You're wrong. Most people of faith receive their faith from within a family. And we need to create families, and we need to raise families as Christians. And that means that we have to tackle this plague of singleness and childlessness within the church. Because we have no stake in the future if we don't have children. And I think maybe Christians would fight a bit harder if they had a stake in the future.
And it's it's to the point. I mean, it's like it may be like the most important battle there is, just like having kids, and like whatever ideas are causing Christians not to have kids and so on need to be attacked relentlessly. I mean, I often think about this in terms of there are certain ideologies that spread, which the more people take them seriously, the more they will ultimately destroy themselves. Right. So if you take something like feminism, there are good aspects of feminism and so on. But if at the end of the day, it's undermining if it's leading to less marriage and less children, it's like your idea is not even going to survive. If you have an idea that reduces those things, that reduces forming families, having children, you're reducing your population, and your government is going to bring in other people who don't support your ideas, and eventually they outnumber you, and your ideas go bye-bye. And so you have all these ideas and movements and so on that are ultimately destroying themselves. The more people take you seriously, the more you're going to the more rapidly you're going to just go off into obscurity and be subjugated by something else that does not share your views. It's like it's almost like if you have that idea, you should want to not be taken seriously, because if you're taken seriously, you actually you change the entire country. And but yeah, we have something similar in the church, in that people have absorbed ideas that ultimately lead to less emphasis on forming families, less emphasis on having kids, and this reduces the birth rates. And guess what? If you don't have enough people entering the workforce, the government is going to make sure you have enough people entering the workforce. They're just going to get them from like the Middle East or something.
Yeah. And so this is one of the biggest challenges for the church, and it is directly relevant to our future in terms of Islamization. But it has a corollary. I'm going to always struggle with this word. An auxiliary point connected to it, which is about youth retention. And so what I mean by youth retention is the fact that lots of churches lose their youth from about teenage years onwards, from 13 onwards. And then some people come back in their late 20s or 30s, but nowhere near like the numbers born into the church. And we've got to ask the question, why? Why are we losing so many of our youth? And that question of youth retention has an answer, a clear sociological answer, because you just look at communities with higher youth retention and you go, what are they doing that we're not? And the answer is a simple one, but again, it's an affront to boomer Christianity. It's an affront to middle class, nice England church leadership. You know, you've got to alienate your children from the surrounding culture. You look at Orthodox Jews, they have high retention rate of the youth. Why? Because they alienate their youth from the surrounding culture. You look at the Amish, they have massive retention of their youth. Why? Because they alienate them from the surrounding culture. You look at the Muslim community, particularly the more radical end, the more extreme end, the more conservative end. They have massive retention of their youth. Not as big as it used to be, incidentally, but still massive retention of their youth. Why? Because they alienate them from the surrounding culture. In other words, they give them an identity that is different from the world around them. They instill pride in that identity, and they make that identity strange to the world that surrounds them. And this is something that the church doesn't do. We basically raise our kids on Bible stories when they're little, and then we try to give them some ethics and morality in their teens, but we don't give them an identity that is different. And that results in a lot of our youth just losing their faith and moving on. I'm so glad for you, Bespoke. I am glad for you, but you're not in the majority. You are not reflective of the most church experience. You know, and so it doesn't change the thesis. But I am happy for you. And so, as a community, again, and we've got to look into how we maintain youth, and I think part of it is about instilling pride in their Christian identity, but also, rather than each congregation holding on to its youth like it's some prized possession, congregations that live in a local area, when kids become teens, should put all their youth together so that there is this Christian group that's large enough so that the Christians within it can find Christian friends. And the job of the adults monitoring that group, one of the jobs of the adults that's monitoring that larger group, is then to look for which youth are on the edges of the group, which youth feel a bit excluded from the group, and find ways to integrate them into, because it's the people on the edges that leave, you know. And this issue needs to be tackled in a lot better way, because again, it goes back to demographics. If you don't have a next generation, your pyramid is inverted and you collapse, and that is the fate that the church faces right now. Do you want to come back on that?
Nope.
Okay. Right. So that brings me to the question of plugging apostasy. So we have people who are leaving the church.
Death sentence.
No.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if that's where you're going.
No, that is not where I'm going.
Okay.
But the point is, one of the reasons why within Islam it has managed to, at least at face value, hold on to its youth is that they do use the death sentence. There's a consequence to leaving. Every time somebody leaves a church, the church should sit down and ask itself, why did that person leave? And it should adapt its life as a church to make sure that less people go down that road. And we should, as churches, we should look at how we stop people, how we plug the gaps that lead to people leaving, and how we cut off the avenues to other people leaving as well. You know, and there's a whole study there to be done. I don't have all the solutions. I just know that is part of the problem, you know, and because there is a massive rate of apostasy from a lot of churches, you know, and we've got to investigate why that is, and we've got to deal with what that is, and how we respond to that. And a lot of these problems, David, require us to think outside of the normal boxes of activity, the normal patterns of behavior, or the expected patterns of behavior. You know, as Christians, if we're not willing to be imaginative and to behave differently and to act differently, obviously in accordance with our faith, you know, then we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes. And this goes into youth, it goes into apostasy, it goes into the demographic collapse, it even goes into Islamization. Why do you think, when the church has been on retreat year after year after year after year, that just repeating what the church has been doing all of those years is somehow going to come out with a different result? Isn't that the very definition of madness?
That's what they say the definition of insanity is.
Yeah. So why is the church doing it? Like, clearly the way that we are discipling youth is failing. So why do we keep repeating this failed model? Clearly the way that we're doing things is not creating families. So why are we just repeating this failed model? And so this is the kind of point that I'm trying to make to the churches. We need to think outside of the boxes given to us by the boomers, given to us by the comfortable middle classes, because those boxes work for them, or did work for them, but they've not worked for anyone else since them. And the church is struggling because of it, you know.
And when you point out things like that, like we have to get away from thinking in this way, it's always in my mind like, oh, you're going to get away from thinking like that one way or another, right? Like, you can either kind of do it deliberately, or society's going to be so screwed up that
you'll be forced to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Churches that don't adapt die, you know, and there's plenty of examples of churches that didn't adapt and died. You know, church in Japan virtually died. Church in China The Nestorian church in China virtually died, refused to adapt. The church in the Thomist Christians in India never advanced because they refused to adapt. They didn't try to do anything different. And so they got stuck, where they started and never really advanced into the interior of India. The church in Algeria and North Africa died because it didn't adapt to its struggles. It also died because it was schismatically divided. But, that's a deeper look into history. And we've touched on the need for Christian unity. And so it is absolutely necessary for Christians that without changing anything of what we believe, and without changing any of our values, that we find new ways of expressing them and living them out, given the challenges that we face and given the challenge of what Islamization is.
Here's the problem I see with any sort of solution, right? How do I put this? Well, I've talked in the past about groups and so on. And okay, so let's call this friend mind and fight mind. So lots of people for lots of their lives, especially before the rise of social media and especially in places like America and so on, they spend most of their lives in what I'll just call friend mind. Meaning everything's calm, things are going well, you wake up, you have breakfast with your family, you go to school or your job, you get along with people, you listen to the radio on the way home, you watch some TV, you have dinner, you go to sleep and so on. There's not a lot of hostility during your day. There's not a lot of aggression and hostility. And when people aren't fighting, when their minds are basically calm, they operate in one way. But if you feel like you're being attacked or you're in danger, you think differently. And the tendency, if you feel like you're being attacked, is to join a group for protection. Now, even when you're in friend mind, you can join a group, but it's not for your protection. It's because you want to be part of that group. You enjoy being part of that group. If you feel like you're being attacked and you join a group, you're there for your safety. And when you're in a group for your safety because you feel like you're being attacked, then just psychologically you have this desire to constantly prove your worth to the group, to prove your value to the group. Otherwise, the group will expel you. Are you sure you're not one of them? And what happens, and if you have two groups, they'll say, let's just talk political, right and left. If you have two groups, right and left, well, as long as they're focused on some goal, then they could actually be kind of working together in achieving that goal. They might have different ideas about how to reach it and stuff like that, but suppose, they can actually be on the same page and be aiming towards the same thing. Once the group is hostile and identifies themselves as being opposed to the other group, right? The key identifying feature of my group is that we're against the other group. So if we're on the left, we're against the right. Once you have that, then all the people in there who are trying to demonstrate their value to the group will do so by becoming more extremely against the other group. And so what you'll have is you'll actually have people climbing over each other to be more and more extreme against the other group, to demonstrate themselves as the most valuable parts of that group. And what happens is then you just end up with massive polarization and so on. So anyway, here's my main underlying issue with what you're saying. People kind of resist change as much as possible unless they're kind of being forced into it. And for what you're saying to work, it's people basically have to be jolted out of their slumber and realize we got some serious problems here and we need to deal with these problems. And the good part, it's actually not a good part, but the good part as far as what you're saying is everyone feels like they're being attacked right now. And lots of people are seeing the problems and seeing where bad ideas of the past are leading to horrible consequences right now. And they can tell the trajectory. Things are going to be way worse in the future. They're realizing we've got some problems here and we need to deal with these problems. But the forces that would jolt people out of their slumber and cause them to decide, hey, we need to aggressively deal with these problems. Those are the same kinds of factors that cause people to click up and attack other groups in all directions. And so when you're talking about like Christians being on the same page and working together, it's like the forces that would cause Christians to realize, wait a minute, we need to work together, are the same kinds of forces that cause Christians to click up with a particular group and then attack in all directions. In other words, the same forces that would cause Christians to realize, whoa, we need to stop focusing on being so nice, and we need to take stands. Those are kind of the same psychological factors that would cause like an Orthodox to be like, hey, I need to be more aggressive towards Catholics, and Protestants to be like, I need to be more aggressive towards Catholic and Orthodox, and Catholics to be like, I need to be more aggressive. In other words, once you dial up, once people go into fight mode instead of just friend mind, and they're going into fight mind, and now I have to fight, now I have to take a stand, now I'm not compromising, now I need to be more aggressive. Like it's almost like the dog issue again, right? It's almost like the dog issue. How do you focus? How do you get everyone focused on, hey, don't fight anyone inside this worldview, but fight against all the bad ideas outside of it.
And we did actually go in talk about that a lot, because AP, when he wanted to, I just wanted to mention something about orthodoxy. I just wanted to talk about orthodoxy. When when he was doing that, we ended up having quite a good conversation on that. So if you want an answer to David's point, go and listen to part one of this, because we did, and so that's why I'm resisting engaging in that, because we did cover that ground at some length in part one of this conversation. So I'm not sidestepping it, but we did talk about this. To quite some hefty degree, because AP was like, oh yeah, but I don't know about them Protestants, and whether we should unite with the Protestants. I love Protestants, but still,
I love Protestants, but that's why they must be executed.
Yeah, he wasn't that bad. He actually was quite conciliatory and agreeing with the point of unity, but he was just pointing out maybe raising some questions around the historical weakness of Protestantism around the question of unity, but there is a good conversation about it that we've had where we talk about exactly that thing, and I discuss exactly that. So if you want an answer to David's point, go and watch part one on either my channel or his channel, and you'll get it there. Okay, so I'm gonna press on, if you'll excuse me for. Mm-hmm. Referring back rather than going over that ground again. Another thing that the church needs to adopt is it needs to be far more apologetical and polemical. So you've got the fact that the church grew at a time when it had and was led by apologists and polemicists. You go and look at the early church fathers, you go and look at those apologetics and how they engaged with Roman culture, how they engaged with Judaism, how they engaged with all the various different religions and quasi-Christianized sects that were competing against the church. And the apologists played an absolutely fundamental role in helping the church to define Christian doctrine and to cultivate a right understanding. And we had an experience of that very recently, you, I, and everybody else who's in the apologetics world, when the furore and the debate emerged about whether Roman Catholics or whether Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And you had all these Roman Catholic apologists coming out to defend the proposition that they do. But in the process of defending it, they said tons of useful stuff. They said things like Islamic worship is invalid. It's non-salvific. Muslims need to convert to Christ and accept Christ as their savior because it's Christ that serves them, not worshipping God that saves them. And they said lots of things that actually, we can take great succor in, but they only did that under pressure. But it clarified, at least from the apologetics perspective, it clarified a certain interpretation of what the Catechism said. Because the Catechism on face value reads in a very kind of like, we're all worshipping the same God, we're all on the same side, we all have the same religion, but that's not how the apologists understood the Catechism. They understood it in a very different light. And so the apologists and apologetics have a really important role to play in cultivating that Christian identity that we talk about in part 1. But then polemics are also hugely important. Like being able to argue against other ideologies, other worldviews, to criticize them, to bring them low intellectually, to expose them, much like you and your band of brothers have been doing on your your Islamic dilemma argument. Which, by the way, has anyone come up with a solution to that little conundrum yet?
Not any solution they'd be Muslims
able
in general
to defend.
Would be willing to accept. I've offered my best thoughts on what I would do it if I were a Muslim, but it's not a direction vast majority of Muslims would be willing to go in. But it is. I've been saying this recently, but I mean, going back to Muhammad Hijab's poll from several years ago, where he asked Muslims when they doubt Islam, what's causing the doubts, and the number one by far response was moral problems with Muhammad.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, Christians should be looking at that, going, I mean, for all these Christians who are, because I mean, it's just endless, and the complaints of, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? There's like this hopelessness. Especially in the UK, more so in the UK. When I hear from people in the UK, I don't know who you hear from, but when I hear from people in the UK,
all the same people.
There's nothing we could do. There's nothing we can do. If we say anything, we get locked up, and we lose our jobs and this and that. And so there's this like profound hopelessness. And what are we going to do? And I'm just sitting there looking. It's like, they've already shown you what their weakness is. They've already shown you what the weakness in their ideology is. As far as Islam is concerned, you have other issues and stuff, but as far as Islam, the Islamic dilemma just destroys dawah. It just destroys dawah, because if you're telling Christians they need to convert to Islam and stuff like this, you have to say your Bible's been corrupted. You have to. You can't have a fully functioning Bible and be successful in dawah without undermining the Bible. They have to attack the Bible. And so if attacking the Bible means your religion is false, oh, we're attacking your Bible. Okay, well then Islam is false. You've just destroyed dawah. Dawah can't even function anymore. And so if we know that, and we know the main thing that causes Muslims to rethink and doubt their religion is moral problems with Muhammad, it's like, how in the name of common sense is every Christian church on the planet not coming up with at least a short list of moral problems with Muhammad to share with Muslims, and at the very least learning the Islamic dilemma? Like, how? I mean, you that would solve a huge problem in the world right now and in your society. And it's just,
well,
either too lazy, or we don't want to be called names, and we just want to be nice.
It's once again, it's boomer churchianity. Boomer churchianity, which makes up the majority of churches, which don't necessarily even believe in evangelism because they are thoroughly embedded to liberal secular humanism and liberal secular democracy. And this is what I mean. We've got to find ways to reconquista these churches back from these boomers, sideline them, push past them, unclog the system from their benign and totally useless thinking. But the other thing is, you mentioned that a lot of Christians feel hopeless because they're scared of losing their jobs. But that's why we need to form Christian economic solidarity. Because if you're working for a Christian employer who is as committed to Christ as you are, he's not going to sack you because you say something controversial. You see my point? So it's about, the problem is that we don't organize ourselves properly, which is one of the points that I'm going to come on to about civic organization. We just don't organize our community effectively. We think that the solution is to have a stronger experience of the power of God if you're a charismatic, or to have a more Bible thumping preach if you're a Presbyterian, Calvinist, Reformed Christian, or to pray more rosary if you're a Roman Catholic, or to pray more Jesus rope and Jesus prayer if you're Orthodox. Every Christian denomination's got its own version of the silver bullet answer, and it's the tripe that is scuttled out by Christians who just don't want to do any heavy lifting, and they don't want to do any heavy thinking about the real problems of the church. So the moment someone like me or you comes along and goes, actually, this is quite a complicated, nuanced, intricate problem where we need to think our way through this and come up with a modulated solution that involves a full spectrum response, there I think, forget all of that. We just need to pray a bit more, you know. And it's because these boomers, they just don't want to think it out. And they've passed on that kind of spirituality to people that have been formed by them. And they don't want to think through complicated issues. And so they come up with some coswallop bang nonsense that has theological overtones that then prevent the church from doing any deeper thinking about these difficult issues. And polemics and apologetics, as you well know, involve thinking. It involves constructing an argument. It involves thinking through an argument. So you can't just lazily open up your Bible, preach your 4-point gospel, and then walk away thinking, job done. I've done my evangelism. There we go. Well, it's all up to the Spirit now. That's the usual kind of tripe that comes out from the sort of boomer Christianity. We need to use polemics because polemics win cultural arguments and they influence the direction of culture. And using apologetics is necessary to build up some kind of defense against Christians from the polemics of other ideologies. So, for instance, the New Atheist movement, when it was born, I know it's run out of steam now and it's all out of puff and it's dead and it's over. But the point is, they bludgeoned the Catholic churches. They resulted in loads of Catholics losing their faith because the Catholics don't teach any apologetics at all. You know, and I've met people who've converted to Islam, and you've asked them why they've converted, and it's like they come out with silly nonsense like, well, the Bible's been corrupted. And it's like, have you thought about this? Or, you know, I don't want to worship the creator. I want to the creation. I want to worship the creator. And it's like, you haven't got the first clue about Christianity, you know, or I don't get the Trinity, as if that's a reason to leave the faith. But the point is, simple apologetics training could have prevented so many people that I've met who've embraced Islam. Simple apologetics could have prevented it, but they weren't equipped even with simple apologetics, and they were blown over by the weakest arguments. And so apologetics and polemics needs to become an everyday staple of discipleship. It needs to become an everyday staple of congregational life. You want to come back on that?
Oh, no, you're absolutely correct. And that would be, other than having babies, as far as just like practical things that people can do right now, that if enough Christians are doing them, actually changes the world and solves the problem. I mean, just imagine a world where in every church, sometime during youth group, they do one session on the Islamic dilemma until people get their minds around it.
Yep.
And so that they may not know how to respond to every objection or something like that, but they've seen the verses. They were presented sometime in Sunday school or in some sort of youth group or something like that. They were shown the verses where the Quran affirms our scriptures. And you make sure everyone has absorbed that idea. Well, eventually, at some point, when they are confronted by the Dawah guy telling them about Islam, they're going to remember that. They're going to remember that. Wait, don't your scriptures affirm our scriptures? Why are you attacking our scriptures? And even if they don't know how to defend it, they'll know that the answers are out there. They'll know that, wait a minute, if this guy keeps pushing, I know how to go and look up all these, I know how to look up the verses and come back with them. That's like world changing. But people, I can't fault them for not like teaching people the Islamic dilemma right now. It's just now becoming somewhat popular. But apologetics in general, it's just like, I mean, Islam trains people to attack other positions. So polemics is built into Islam. I mean, it's built into the Quran. The Quran's constantly attacking everyone else's positions. And so Muslims are just raised attacking everyone else's positions. And it's one thing if Christians are at least taught apologetics, even if they're not taught polemics, even if they're not taught to attack other positions, if they're just taught to defend their own, then when the attacks come, okay, great. But when when churches aren't doing apologetics or polemics, and everyone else, atheists are taught how to attack Christianity. Muslims are taught how to attack Christianity. And everyone's attacking Christianity. You haven't even learned how to like defend the basics. You're in a lot of trouble. But I have to say that is one of the other good things about the new atheism and about Islam. It's putting the pressure on churches. They're realizing we need to learn some of this stuff. So that's actually good. People are picking up on it. It's just like, why do you have to get the message like after millions of people have already been harassed and mocked outside the church? Why didn't you do this in the 20th century?
It is visionless, unimaginative, ineffective leadership, which is going to be a theme that runs through a lot of what I say. Just comfortable leaders, happy to organize their little church program. They're just concerned about keeping everybody in their little congregation, and they don't care about the bigger picture. And that is the kind of failure of leadership that has been letting the church down on countless issues, countless times. And we need unrest amongst the laity about this. You know, we need to desire better leaders and challenge our leaders on why they're failing to tackle these big problems, you know. And this idea about apologetics and polemics connects to the idea that we talked about in part one of this, which is this idea of creating an identity that emphasizes that which is different, that which is not the same to others. Because by creating an identity that is not the same, you toughen up your communal identity. Amplify that by a Benedict option, and you've got a resilient community. But if you do what the boomers have done, which is like emphasize everything that makes us common to one another, emphasize the common humanity, that we're all on the same journey, that God loves us all, that is the recipe to allow Islam to just chew its way into your community and take more and more people from it. Because whilst you're trying to imagine yourself living in a hippie commune, other religions are busy attacking you, and they're chomping away and pulling people away. And so it is absolutely necessary that all of our churches teach apologetics and teach polemics. Right, shall I continue?
Mm-hmm.
I am conscious that you might want to do some super chats. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, we could take super chats as we're going along, or you can go through everything and then we can do them all at the end, or you can cut out if you have.
Well, I'll do one more point. And then we'll do super chats and see what comes out of that conversation. So, right now, as you and I both know, there is a bit of a revival going on. And internet apologists like you and myself have played a big role in that, you know. And that revival is happening amongst the people who are right of political spectrum. It tends to be mainly through the Conservatives. So three pressures have combined: the lockdown during the COVID, the trans ideology overreach, and then the mass celebration of terrorism and Islamist jihad that we've seen across the West. These three pressures have kind of created a shockwave in the political right of spectrum that have aroused a lot of people and sent them into an existential crisis where they're then thinking, okay, what is the grounding of my beliefs? What is the grounding of my identity? And as they've followed the gold into the earth, they keep encountering Christianity again and again and again. And so lots of people are becoming Christian through that result. Now, this gives us a great opportunity to with these new believers, to not mold them in boomer failure, in middle classdom, soy Christianity, but to reshape the church with an influx of new catechumens. Sorry.
Oh yeah, so this is important. This is important, everyone. Be sure to get your mind around this point, because we've talked about sort of signs of revival, in that in the U.S. the number of people who identify as Christians was steadily declining for many years, and then all of a sudden, over the past about 4 or 5 years, the number's been going up. So we look at that and then we say, good. And then the study I mentioned earlier, where in the UK, the youngest generation is actually the least atheistic and the most open to hearing you present your message about why Christianity is true. They're the most open of any generation, the young generation, and so on. So we're looking at all that. And then, I hear from people constantly saying their church attendance is going up. I saw it circulating on X the other day about how Bible sales are up 50% from a few years ago. And so there are all these signs that all this awesome stuff is happening, and it looks like a revival is forming. And what Bob is pointing out here is you've got an influx of new people coming into the church. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to teach them? Are you going to teach them the same stuff from 30 years ago? Or are you going to do something? Or are you going to do something else? Better.
Or are you going to teach them a kind of discipleship that makes them relevant combatants for the cause of the church today, in the context of today? The battle that the church faces is not the Reformation of 500 years ago. The battle that the church faces is not the 1960s. Arguments, and it certainly isn't arguments between Democrats and Republicans or between conservatives and Labour. The battle that the church faces is, are we going to step into the void created by liberal progressive politics, and are we going to do it robustly enough that we can rebuff Islam that is also stepping into that void? Are we going to do it robustly enough that we can push back the sort of the clearing effect, the liquidizing effect of progressive politics? And can we do it from an authentically Christian place? And I refer people back to part 1 to understand what I mean by that. So there's this opportunity, because you've got this generation of people who are coming into the church that have no prior connection to the church. So they have no expectations of what the church should be. They're open to whatever we provide for them, for those of us that are more established Christians. And so we should use this new generation to let them also point out to us things that, because we're so ingrained in the church, we might not see it as ineffective. But let them look at, as they come into the church, ask them with fresh eyes, how do you find the church? What do you think is good? What do you think is bad? What do you think works? What do you think doesn't work? But then also, because they're coming in with a clean slate, catechize them in such a way that they understand themselves to be the kind of Christian that the church needs right now. That more robust, strong, outward-facing, Christian that's going to make his presence felt culturally, make his presence felt economically, have a family, have a big family, make sure his children are raised up in the faith. That is driven towards the idea of the full Christian, for the full Christianization of the whole of society, and he's working because he's moved in amongst lots of other Christians. He finds it easy to work with those Christians to achieve that end. And a lot of these conservatives, they're bringing into the church something that the church lost during the boomer years, which is masculinity. And the church, I beg, do not squash the masculinity of these young men coming into the church. Do not be intimidated by it. Do not effeminize it. Do not sort of try to drive it solely in the direction of devotion and piety and prayer, but energize it, allow it to be what it is, but use it as a sword for the cause of the church, and let it express itself politically, economically, socially, and culturally. Let men be men. Men want to be on a side. They like competition with others. So let us be in competition with those that aren't Christians, with the aim of winning. Let men rise to the occasion of defending the church, and instill in them, this code of chivalry that we touched upon in part one. And let's let them create a different kind of church culture that has some masculinity in it, not to the oppression or repression or exclusion of femininity, but at least on equal terms with the femininity that already permeates the church hugely. And that's not to deride it or knock it. Femininity is as much a part of the church as masculinity, but right now masculinity is unwanted in a lot of churches because they just don't know what to do with it. And where their response is, oh, just pray more, just fast more, fast and pray, study your Bible. They may go out and say evangelize, but these things are themselves not full expressions of masculinity. Men want to build, so let them build a civilization. Give them the vision of building a Christian one.
So if you get a young generation coming in, masculine, aggressive, it shouldn't be, hey, you guys are masculine and aggressive and stuff like that, so we need to focus on calming you guys down and getting you to get along with everyone. It should be, hey guys, it's good that you're young and masculine and aggressive because the world needs people like you, because there are bad things out there. So let's make sure you are focused on defending things that need to be defended and attacking things that need to be attacked. I've often thought that about
building things that need to be built.
Yeah, I've often thought that like it would be more effective. Like you got way back in school, you got like bullies, right? People bully other kids. I've often thought like if you were to train the bully correctly and train him into being a protector instead of, because there you're not just, hey, stop being what you are and stop having this urge to impose your will on other people or something like that. It's like, hey, do you know there are bad students out there, bad kids out there who like to oppress others. So you're the sort of person who can stand up for those little kids who can't defend themselves against stronger kids. So why don't you gear yourself towards, you could actually train people into, putting these things to better use. But I guess it goes back to the dog situation again. Don't make men less masculine. Just like focus it in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then it's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's a solution.
And this goes into another part of what the church needs to do is we need to organize civically. So as you know, there's a lot of problem with rape gangs in the UK, and a part of that involves online grooming, which actually in the UK is carried out more by white people than it is by anyone else. Online grooming, different communities that target children in different ways. But there have been, because of the sheer failure of the police, there have been these vigilante groups that have set themselves up, and they're doing what the police should have been doing. Now, all the ones that I've encountered, they work within the law. Eventually, they gain a recognition by the police, and the police work with them.
So hang on. Are those the sorts of the videos that I always see where they're like confronting a guy and they're pointing the camera at him and saying,
Yep.
"Hey, you were
the one.
yeah, you were communicating with this girl who's 13 and you said this and this and this and that to her."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so those kind of vigilante groups are an expression of civic organisation to plug a gap. Now the reality is, as Britain is becoming a failing state, it's not a failed state, but it is a failing state, as what has happened in Birmingham has just demonstrated. And just a few years ago, our Parliament stopped actually working for an entire evening because of Islamist intimidation. So the United Kingdom is becoming a failing state. But as it becomes a failing state, there is, and this is also true of Lebanon, so if you're a Lebanese Christian, pay attention to the next bit. As it becomes a failing state, it gives the opportunity for the church to organize society by organizing itself civically to do what the state isn't doing. And to prism that through caring for its own community. And so in areas where the state is both failing and in areas where the state functions, Christians need to organize civically to plug the gap. So an example of that would be, we've got a National Health Service in the UK. It's long since past time that the Christians inside the NHS, who are disproportionately represented within the NHS because of the nature of our faith being about love and care for people, organise their own trade union, because the socialist communist ones won't defend the rights of Christian nurses and other women not to be confronted with men changing in their changing rooms, displaying their full genitalia. But we need to, or we'll sack a black nurse who's being racially abused because she refers to a man as a man, even though the man says a woman. We need a Christian trade union. We need Christians to organize to civically do what the church is failing to do, what the state is failing to do, but also to defend Christians and to advance the cause of the church within the state. So, for example, within the Home Office of the UK, we know that there is a Muslim network, and that may have having a negative impact, or at least an Islamic impact, upon the policies and the procedures and the ambitions of the Home Office. We've had people, Muslim politicians like Humza Yousaf, celebrating the fact that, there's now more Muslims in our parliament. And we've had the creation of a Muslim Impact Forum that is seeking to bring Muslim intellectuals, Muslim charities, Muslim politicians, Muslim civil servants, a whole range of different Muslim specialists together to organize solutions along Islamic lines in our society. Well, that's what the church should be doing. And so we need to organize civically to pull, drag, kicking and screaming, or influence, nudge, and cajole society to move in a Christian direction. All of this hinges on the idea of a Christian vision for society. So I refer to people to part one of our dialogue. But it's through civic organization that we will have better impact. And that, again, will be amplified if it is combined with a Benedict option. In fact, everything that I have said will be amplified, both in part one and this one, will be amplified through the Benedict option. That is the one move. If you take nothing else from anything I've said, take that away, the Benedict option. But through civic organization, we can begin to address society. And if the church ends up becoming the answer to society's problems, then lots of the normies, lots of the undecided, lots of the sheeple will start to follow the church and come into the orbit of the church, because the church is providing the solution to the problems. But we can't provide the solution to the problems if we just keep doing things that the church has always done and just keep maintaining the same patterns of behavior that have done nothing for the church in the last 50 years, except see it die. Does that make sense to that point? Do you get what I'm trying to say there?
Oh, I really like the idea of, and it's already been happening as far as people viewing Christianity, people viewing the church as a solution, or at least part of the solution to what's going wrong with the world. And I've seen lots of atheists over the past several years warming up to that idea. I've seen, if you go back 15 years, it was just Christianity, get out the way, we'll show you how to do it. We atheists will build our scientific utopia and so on. And okay, we've had plenty of years of that. How's it going? Oh, the entire world seems to be collapsing, even though millions of people became atheists during the height of the new atheism. How did that work out for anyone? How did that improve the world in any way? But atheists seem to have absorbed that idea, and that lots of atheists who were very hostile 10 years ago aren't hostile anymore. And I just see an ever increasing number of atheists who are like rooting for the church. Like, hey, I don't believe in what you guys are saying, but I really hope you're successful, and I really hope you can deal with Islam and stuff. They've caught on. They've caught on to the fact that they can't deal with these kinds of things. And that's I've seen. It was the art conference last year. I was watching. I think it was it Oz Guinness? I was thinking of who was speaking, but he was warning against sort of the resurgence of Christianity as being just something like practical. Like, you can't just view it as something helpful. You have to view it as true. But I was thinking, no, it is pretty different if people view it as helpful. And I'm saying that because if you just go back 10 years, it was just standard among lots of atheists, and I know because I talked to them, to view Christianity as just like bad. And I've mentioned this before, but this was after a debate. I had a debate at Columbia University on the moral argument. And afterwards, I was just hanging out with atheists. It was like 7 or 8 Asian atheists. And they kept asking me about different arguments for the existence of God. And so I'm going through different arguments and stuff. And I said at some point, so what do you think of that? And one of the atheists said, to be honest, I don't even care if it's true. I care that it's bad. And that was like shocking to me. It's like, because I've been saying for years, like, I don't believe in Islam. I think Islam is bad. If it were true, I would want to know it. I would want to know that it's true. That would be something that I would want to know if Islam were true. So it was like completely foreign to my thinking that, wait, I don't care if something is true. I only care that it's bad. And so I was confused by that. And I went down the line of all the atheists and I asked them if you agree with what he just said. And they all agreed. I don't care. It's the fact that it's bad is way more important than whether it's true or false. And so it's like, wait, if that's your thinking, if you've decided that it's bad because you've heard that Christianity destroys science and Christianity just ruins everything and it keeps you from having your utopia and so on. And if you're sitting there preaching the gospel or giving an argument for the existence of God, if they're filtering everything through, I don't care because it's bad, they're not even able to take it seriously. They're not taking anything you say seriously. So to me, it is extremely important to view Christianity as something good, to view the church as a force for good, that is here to that it does something good in society. Even if you are not part of the church, it is still doing things for you that help you, and you need to be aware of that. It seems like an important framework for even being able to take the gospel, hear the gospel, and take it seriously.
Yeah,
and
I think I mean it. You know, if people have a positive view of Christianity, it draws people into the orbit of the church, which makes evangelism easier. And it says something about how a lot of people in our culture think. Is they think about pragmatics. You know, their life is, they have a very dim view of metaphysics, and they don't have a particularly strong understanding of metaphysics. They think in terms of, well, what works and what doesn't work. And that's one of the big selling pitches of Islam, if you know, as me and you have heard, is that they present Islam as the solution. You know, it's the Muslim Brotherhood answer. Like, you know, whatever the problem is, the answer is more Islam. Because they understand that people think pragmatically, they don't think metaphysically. So when the church goes out there and it's like, oh, we're going to preach about sin and hell and judgment, and like, for the vast majority of people, you might as well just be talking baby language, gobbledygook, and making inaudible, you know, incoherent sounds. Because for the full understanding of these metaphysics, very few people get it. And so one of the key ways to evangelize, and I find that this works for me, is working from the principle of discipleship, and almost taking a pastoral, but without the softness, line of engaging with the topics that people are thinking about and saying, okay, how does Christian values and doctrine work out as a solution to whatever this problem is, X? You know, what are the Christian answers that are possible to problem X? And if I can give a really convincing answer, I usually win the right amongst the people that I'm speaking to, that they then start taking Jesus Christ more seriously. And the point that Os Guinness was making in his talk, because I can't remember, I remember Os Guinness's talk, but I can't remember whether it was because I was there or because I watched it on YouTube, because I definitely did watch it on YouTube. But I was also at the ARC conference listening to talks. I think it was because I watched it on YouTube. The point that Os Guinness was making was that a society needs to organize its laws and institutions based upon moral values. But moral values themselves are not self-sustainable. Moral values require a metaphysical basis. And so if you only treat Christianity as a series of moral values, it will collapse. It will do nothing for you. And in fact, that is exactly the issue, you know, that liberal Christianity tries to do, and that liberalism tries to do, is it tries to take the moral values of Christianity whilst discarding the metaphysics that upholds it. And that's why it's all collapsing around us right now, because the metaphysical basis has been so forgotten that now the values can't be sustained. And Os Guinness was trying to point out that you've got to believe in the metaphysics to sustain the moral values, and then you can organize your laws and your institutions around your moral values.
Yeah, I agree. And I understood like the point he was making. It's just, hey, if you just say, okay, Christianity is useful to our society, so let's kind of be in favor of Christianity helping in society. Well, if people aren't, at the end of the day, really taking it seriously as true, it's just not going to last. It's going to fizzle out. It's going to fizzle out over time. And so you have to be taking it. You have to be taking it as true. Yeah, it was just, when he said it, it sounded like, because I'm just thinking of all the atheists who were like,
yeah,
all right, guys, we're rooting for you now. We've seen what we're up against. We can't deal with it, so we're rooting for you now. I'm just thinking, it is actually important. It is actually important. People taking it as something good. Yeah.
We should cultivate this. We should cultivate this. I mean, I just wish Christians would be more pragmatic in their thinking about evangelism and less dogmatic about it. And we'd probably have better evangelism going off. you know. Anyway, between this talk and part one, I think that there's pretty much a lot there for people to chew on, in terms of the shape that the church needs to take to push back against Islamization, and reverse Islamization. There's probably things that I've forgotten, but there's plenty of stuff that I talk about on my own channel, where you'll pick up things that I might have forgotten on this one. Do you want to do super chats or take questions from people, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, most of the super chats are usually questions and so on. So yeah, we'll take some of these. Anytime you need to cut out or something like that, just let me know. No problem. And
maybe 20 minutes for you to get through super chats.
Yeah, that's good. And I went ahead and added. So guys, in the description, I have links to Bob's YouTube channel, Bob's X page, and part one of this discussion. So,
and I just want to say, lots of people think that my channel is Soco Films. That is not my channel. I'm not supported through Soco Films or through Revelations 22. The only channel that belongs to me is Bob of Speaker's Corner. So.
All right, so we got the link to that in the description, everyone. Someone in chat said D. Wood is retarded. I replied, I myself am clinically retarded and taking medication, and am clear that Islam is evil, even to my mind. So we can say yes.
Brilliant rebuke.
Yeah. So I have
the way it's been framed.
Yeah. So I have antisocial personality disorder. Eunuch Petsu is clinically retarded, and yet, in spite of all our mental health issues or cognitive issues, we can all recognize that Islam is bad.
Yeah.
So what's your excuse, those of you who have no mental problems or no cognitive issues? You already mentioned this earlier, but he says, have you seen Maccabi fans banned from football?
Yes, it's worth just sitting on it for a second. The very fact that the elements of the Muslim community have managed to create a scenario in which Jews who are peacefully coming from Israel cannot enter the city is, when they're not doing anything wrong and they're doing it all legally, is a sign of just how bad things are in the UK. And it's not just that. We've had a a charity park run organised by a mosque in a public space in which women were prohibited from participating, even though it was meant to be a family community event. But that is because it's in a public space, it means that it broke the laws around gender discrimination, and the state has not done anything about that. Last year, we had our entire parliament malfunction for one evening. Just for a few hours, it stopped working according to its own constitutions because of intimidation from the Muslim community. There is massive problems that are now being spotted and highlighted. It's not just the rape gangs, it's other things as well, like the takeover of the prison system, where the liberal secular humanist state run by comfortable middle-class people, many of whom are progressive, simply cannot see or want to tackle or are able to think on how to tackle the problems that we're facing. And this is what it's resulted in. I suspect within 5 years we might even see an anti-Semitic pogrom in the UK at the rate that we're going.
Would not be surprising, I have to say. And that's sad.
Very.
When discussing the Injil, have you ever discussed the Great Commission from Mark 15? I am not familiar with a Great Commission in Mark 15. That's about Jesus' trial and crucifixion. So what are you talking about? Do you mean Mark 16?
I think he's. I mean, unless it's in the long ending of Mark, the long ending of Mark, which might be taken out of some passages of Mark, but obviously you've got the Great Commission in Matthew 28. Unless he's making a mistake there. I mean, I've not got my Bible to hand, but
so Pain of Reality. We would think you might be referring to the longer ending of Mark, but we don't actually know what you're talking about.
Or Matthew 28, or Matthew 28. Maybe he's given the wrong reference. So
Well,
there's
even
definitely
then,
a Great Commission in Matthew 28.
yeah. So that's normally what we refer to when we say to the Great Commission, to go into all the world, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But I don't know what you mean as far as when discussing the Injil. Do you mean like
church? Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, we would often bring up as something that's contradicting Islam. So that's part of that passage, contradicting Islam, and yet Islam is affirming our scriptures, and so it's a problem. But yeah, we're not exactly sure.
Panio, the thing that's throwing us is you're using the term Great Commission, which in church language refers to Matthew 28. That's what's confusing us. So be more specific, because Great Commission is not associated with Mark 15.
Have you heard of Polemic Pulse's new track, Desert Drift, featuring the Al-Zut? No, I have not.
I have not.
I'll check that out.
Nope.
But anything featuring the Al-Zut, it deserves to be checked out. And Muhammad would agree. Me thinks of something embarrassing I said last week. Remembers David says not to regret anything. Me tries harder not to regret. Regret intensifies. I didn't tell you not to regret.
Unlucky escape.
Resort to violence is automatic admission of defeat. Not sure when this was. This might have been early. It might have been when we were talking about Charlie Kirk and stuff being shot. As in, oh, okay, here's a follow-up. As in, what exactly was Jesus supposedly telling his disciples to go out and preach in Mark 15? We still do not know what you were talking about.
You're going to have to give us the verse, bro.
Yeah, that would be Matthew 28. That would be Matthew 28 when he says, go into all the world, make disciples of all nations, and so on. Unless you're talking about the longer ending of Mark, but that would be Mark 16. Flag Quran for hate speech until they stop flagging free speech.
Can I just say, like, a lot of people come out with suggestions that aren't particularly well thought out. Christians, we need to understand the law. We need to understand how to use the law. We need to understand economy. We need to learn how to use economy, and we need to understand culture and learn how to use culture. Like, flagging the Quran for hate speech is a ridiculous suggestion. It will achieve nothing. What would be much better to do is identify mosques whose sermons are preaching hatred and flag individual speakers. You know, this kind of flag the Quran, it's bravado, but it's bravado of the worst kind. It doesn't help us. Be more strategic in your thinking, be more nuanced in your thinking, identify the preachers that are preaching hate and go after those preachers one by one.
Or something easy to do, because you can't exactly flag the Quran, right? But there is something you could do that's in that ballpark, namely when anyone is talking about hate speech or when anyone is talking about Islamophobia, you should always be ready to pull up some Quran passages, right? When someone's like, oh, the Islamophobia, this guy said Islam is false. Okay, well, if you're saying that's a problem and that sort of thing needs to be banned, what do you do with fight those who do not believe in Allah?
Yep.
What do you do with Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures? Why aren't you complaining about this stuff right here? What's going on here? Yep. So that should be pretty standard.
It's tackling the cognitive dissonance of the liberals. And one of the ways to do that is to go, I often do it this way. It's like, are you against slavery? Yeah, of course I'm against slavery. Are you against domestic violence to women? Yeah, of course I'm against domestic violence to women. Are you against child marriages? Yeah, I'm against child marriages. Are you against, and I get them to list all the things that they're against. And then I go, right, so you're with me then in being against Sharia law. And then you just watch their heads pop as they go, does not compute. Yep. And then you start helping them to square the circle.
Yeah, that's a very important point, that vast majority of people agree with our reasons for opposing Islam. They've just been programmed to not criticize Islam or to think, not associate it with Islam.
Yeah, they don't think that Islam is associated with slavery or child marriage or any of these things. And so they won't oppose it.
We have full support to our dear Christian brothers. Yes, indeed. We had a couple of super chats from Enos here, but no comment. Thank you. Could a Christian bank help zero interest rates for Christians? There is a lot of Christians worldwide. Thank for everything you guys do. God bless.
Actually, this is a brilliant idea, and it goes along with the idea of economic solidarity. So, for instance, a lot of the big churches own their own banks as a way of transferring money between their own groups. So, for instance, the Salvation Army has a bank, has an international bank. Well, imagine if the Salvation Army decided, something, we're going to get on side with this cause of building the kingdom of God, economically and politically and culturally. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a high street bank. How many of you would want to put your money in a bank owned by the Salvation Army, knowing that bank then could support Christian industries, could support Christian businesses, could support Christian startups, could safeguard Christian charities from being debanked or Christian individuals from being debanked. So, and also, it would also allow us a way to divest from banks that are creating Sharia compliant banking. So there's a lot of banks that are doing Sharia compliant banking. That if we had a Christian bank, we could then divest from the secular liberal banks and go, we're taking our money out of your bank because you are promulgating Sharia law. And then Christians obviously could have a debate ourselves amongst about interest and whether interest is appropriate or not for Christians. But a Christian bank is absolutely fundamental to what I'm talking about in terms of waging the economic war for Christendom.
Problem with Islam is that Muhammad has given Jesus attributes even as far back as 15th century. Konstantin Mihailovic, a former Janissary, says as much. I don't know what you're talking about, given Jesus attributes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's talking about either. And like that can only refer to divine attributes, because obviously, it would be nonsensical to mention that Jesus is a man and Muhammad is a man. So it's got to be talking about the divine attributes. And the reality, Islam doesn't do that. Islam does not elevate Muhammad to the status of a god. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, they treat him as an idol, but not as far as giving him like divine attributes and so on. By the way, Jesus is the unlettered prophet, John 15. I assume you mean that he's the unlettered prophet of Surah 7, verse 157. There are people who suggest that. Does historical Muhammad do more damage to the Islamic narrative or religious Muhammad?
Definitely religious Muhammad.
Yeah,
I think the super chat is making reference to Dr. J. Smith's thing. Like you're going on about the Islamic dilemma, Dr. J. Smith is attacking this idea of the historical critique of Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And so by criticizing that historical critique of Muhammad and the sort of theories that come out of that, which I think are overheated, and I've said this to Dr. Smith's face on a shared platform, so this is not me talking behind his back. Versus the religious Muhammad of the Hadiths, the ones that me and you attack, the problematically moral Muhammad. And I would say that the one that is more devastating, that does more damage, is the Muhammad of the Hadiths. And pointing out just how abhorrent he is as a human being.
Yeah, Coltrane, if that's what you're referring to, I would definitely agree with Bob. The vast majority of Muslims I've ever seen who've left Islam did so after finding out about Muhammad. And in fact, I mentioned earlier the poll that Muhammad Hijab did, what causes Muslims to doubt their religion? The biggest factor by far, is moral problems with Muhammad. I'm sure there are people who concluded that Muhammad didn't exist or something like that and doubted the religion for that reason. I'm not familiar with them. Like I know Mohammed Sven Kalish was a guy up in it was a guy in Germany who was a Muslim and left Islam because he concluded Muhammad probably never existed. But vast majority of people who start doubting Islam, it's because of moral problems with Muhammad rather than thinking that he didn't exist or something like that. Congratulations on getting married, Bob. God bless.
Thank you so much.
By the way, Hemden is Muhammad's name in Bible on my video. I don't know what you're referring to, but here's a follow-up. My Let There Be Light vid A52 in Hemden. I still don't know what you're talking about.
I just want to say, guys, like on your super chats, remember we have zero context and we only have one sentence. Yeah. So true. We can't be. We don't have the powers of surveillance. You've got to actually to give us a coherent thought.
Paul says Christians don't vote in local elections. Local elections is local controls. It seems like a good place to start in the local area around you.
I think that is a really good, important thing that I would push back on Paul and say that Christians do vote in local elections. But the point is they vote for other people's politics. They vote for other people's agendas. And they don't vote for a Christian politique or for Christian politicians or for Christian agendas. And if they did, they still wouldn't win because they are too few in number. And that's why you need the Benedict option. Because with the Benedict option, you can have the numbers to vote in a Christian who's going to push a Christian agenda in politics.
Bob has put into words about youth family church that I've been thinking through. Thank you, from a Christian family man and youth leader.
I might do an entire show on it on my channel, like how do we retain youth? It's a really important point that we're getting wrong, and we need to learn. And we need to learn what from communities that succeed. And the communities that succeed are the ones that instill a strong pride in an identity that is emphasizing what makes it different from its surroundings. And that's what we need to be doing, especially with teenagers. Instill reasons to be proud of being a Christian, and then to cultivate an identity that makes that teenager different to the world around them, but same to all the other Christians that they know, and collectivize that youth so that they want to hang around with other Christians.
Karen Fisher says, a few bob for Bob.
Well, enjoy that, David, and enjoy that few bob for.
Yeah, Hey, wait, you guys call dollars Bob?
Yeah, we call pounds Bobs.
Okay, Bobs, because I heard Sig. I thought he said knob. You don't call them knobs, right?
There might be some region in England where they do that.
Okay.
There's so many regional dialects in the UK.
Okay.
But Bob is a reference to money. But I just want to say, Karen, the only person that's getting that Bob is David.
Yeah, that's so David, going directly to me on my channel.
Please enjoy a drink and a dinner on me.
I will. By the way, Bob, how can people support you if they want to?
Just through my channel. All the links are there. My channel, Bob the Speaker's Corner, not Soco Films. No. So, I know that there's loads of people.
The link in the description.
Yeah, loads of people give money to Soco Films thinking that money's coming to me, and it's not true.
All right, so you got the link to Bob's channel in the description, and he's got all the necessary links over there. The difference is the other religions culturalize their religion to every aspect of their lives. We don't.
Well, what's stopping us from doing it? We should do it. And there are ways to do it. And it is part of the solution. One of the things that I get frustrated with is Christians will complain about what someone else is doing as if they are powerless to do the same. They complain like, oh, they're doing that and that works, and that's why I'm angry, because it's effective. And they talk about it like they don't have the power to do the same. We can do the same, and we should do the same. We should culturalize Christianity.
Yeah, it reminds me of PBD, Patrick David was having a discussion with Nick Fuentes, and Nick Fuentes was complaining. He's like, and these Jews, they all stick together, and they come to a different area, and they like try to help each other out. And he's like, well, why wouldn't we all do that? He goes, I'm Assyrian. I wish Assyrians would do that more, and like Assyrians would help out, their fellow Assyrians more and more and stuff. So, yeah, why are you complaining about something they're doing when it actually kind of makes sense?
No, but let's do it as Christians, not as Syrians, not as Americans, not as British, not as white, not as black. Let's do it as Christians.
We have nice haircut, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Consider homeschooling and joining a Christian co-op built-in community of people where family and raising children is the inbuilt number one goal. Every group in my area is at full capacity and more coming in daily. Wow. Every group in his...
Well, it looks like you might be developing a bit of a Benedict community wherever you are. But certainly homeschooling is something that I would support. I think homeschooling is part of the remedies, part of the arsenal of solutions that we have to hold on to our children and to make sure that we're raising Christians, not raising little liberals.
Hey, when we hear, I don't know how things are in the UK, Benedict is not a popular name in the U.S. because of
Really?
Benedict Arnold. Certain names have just been ruined, like Adolf. The name Adolf has been ruined. No one wants to. It's like Judas. People don't want to name their kid Judas and stuff like that. But Benedict was the traitor. But then I just wondered. I was like, wait a minute. Would he be?
Wait. Was Benedict Arnold the one that was on the side of the British?
Yeah. Well, he was not
a traitor.
Yeah, he starts up. So
a loyalist.
But he's in the Revolutionary Army, but then switches sides, and so he's viewed as a traitor. And I was just wondering would he? I know he went to the UK after that and was like a hero, and I'm wondering is he remembered as a hero? Because we think of it as we think of him as like synonymous with traitor. Like if you want to say someone's a traitor, you say this Benedict Arnold here. But I was thinking it might be the opposite over there. They might be like a guy who realizes he's wrong and then goes back.
A guy who repents from error and understands that tea is important and that you can wait for representation. Just pay your taxes. It's like
that's funny. This guy hasn't even mentioned the gospel. He is teaching us what exactly?
Okay, so this is the kind of really childish thinking.
Yeah, we're not teaching the gospel here, and it's. I think it's taken for granted that we preach the gospel. We're talking about other things. Christians preach the gospel. Churches are preaching the gospel. That's going on. He's talking about some other things that they're not doing that might actually be helpful, and so he's focusing on those things. So
yeah, but this is genuinely a problem in the church. This always comes up. There's always these people like, yes, but you're not preaching the gospel. It's like I'm trying to teach physics. Yeah. I'm like, you're not preaching the gospel, but I'm talking about economics.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about a sociological problem faced by the church.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. The gospel is obviously part of that, but that's a given. I'm not going to talk about something that everybody knows. I'm going to talk about the stuff that they're not thinking about. Panio. Oh, go back to school, brother.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you were just supposed to the entire time be going, and we need to preach the gospel, guys. Christians need to preach the gospel.
I mean, I could have just done a 5-minute presentation of a 4-square gospel, and then Panio would have been happy. It's problem solved.
Yeah. Apparently this dude keeps commenting. This is funny, but we'll get to it in a second. Imagine churches put in half the work into polemics and apologetics what Muslims do. We only have a few guys and it's already looking better. Yeah. Better now. Yeah. I mean, guys think, because I keep telling people like back in 2005, 2006, there were very few of us doing anything back then. And then we started hearing of some more people coming along. And now people are just everywhere, and you see the impact that it's having. You see Dawa just crumbling, and it's still a tiny minority of people who are actually dealing with this. It's a lot. It's a lot because I'm comparing it with only having a handful. So it's a lot of people dealing with it now, but it's still like a tiny minority, and Islam is already, Dawa's already crumbling. Like what? Yeah. I mean, just think if you had 10 times as many people going after Islam. It's like world changing, and it's not hard to do. Not hard to do.
And the thing is, we're moving into a new golden age of apologetics.
Oh, yeah.
And the quiet revival in the West is due in large part to online apologists and polemicists like you and myself, and the others before us. And just it just goes to show, like, if we can have this impact with the few of us doing it, what would it do if the whole church got on board? So yeah, totally good point there.
Mm-hmm. The problem is Christendom is 100% My Little Pony and 0% Deus Vult. Can we at least get 5% Deus Vult? We are not asking for much.
I mean, I think I know what he's referring to there.
Oh, I do. Yeah, it's the rallying cry of the Crusades.
Yeah, and the truth of it is that there is going to be a need to use force, and that has to be done by the state, obviously, and so you need a Christian state to do it, because the Islamists are not just going to roll over. Like, if you want to evangelize large Muslim populations, the first thing that you need is the backing of the state. But once the state backs you, the first job of the state is to take out all those self-appointed thugs that kind of police. They're the internal police of the Muslim community. They appoint themselves and they go around and smash people's doors in if they think the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, as even Muslims in the UK find out. There's the famous case of a Muslim scholar. I think he was in Birmingham or Bradford, and he had some. He was, he's a Muslim, a practicing Muslim. He does dawah, and he had some out of the box thinking on Palestine from a Muslim perspective. And he had his entire house was invaded, his doors kicked in, his windows smashed. I forget his name.
Was that Mufti Abu Layth?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Now, if you want to see large populations of Muslims evangelized, you need to find some way of getting rid of those thugs, and so that means that the state has to step in and use force to get rid of those thugs. And once they're removed, you're going to find evangelism in the Muslim community so much easier and so much more effective. Because once that internal police force is removed, Muslims will eventually realize, oh, actually, I can do what I want. No one's going to attack me. And lots of them that want to leave will leave.
Coltrane here says, if the Catholics 1,000 years ago saw modern Catholics, they would have imprisoned or deleted them. The level of heresy these past few months is crazy. I haven't been following it, so I don't know what you're referring to.
And it's great to say hyperbole kind of statements, but how useful are they, guys?
And here we have your good buddy, Pain of Reality, who says, zero scriptural support for anything he is saying. Hey, Pain of Reality, I just want to point out, dude, you are seriously part of the problem.
Yes.
You are seriously part of the problem. In that, all we do is we just preach the gospel. That's all we do. And guess what? Christians have been doing that. How's that working out?
Yeah, it's the point of this idea that every statement you need to make is connected to some proof text of Scripture is just a really poor use of Scripture. It's not how you use the Bible. Like, the way that you use scriptures, you understand the meta-narrative, you understand the story of Scripture. You identify with that story, you see yourself living in that story and living out that story, and then you make it real. And so if you want scriptural support, Paneo, go and see what the Scripture says about the kingdom of God, and you'll begin to see that actually there's and have a good understanding of what the Scripture says about the church and the relationship between the church and the kingdom of God. And you'll realize actually that there's a huge amount of scriptural support for what I'm saying. It's just that, unfortunately, you've got a very narrow and dogmatic and flawed way of both approaching Scripture and understanding the application of the Christian faith. But come and debate with me one time.
Yeah, quit running. Hypothetically, if a crusade were to be declared, a violent one, highly unlikely, against Islam, in light of all the awful rape, murder, and terrorism, with a chant of Deus Vult, would you support it? I don't think you need to do anything. People still, to this day, do not understand how weak Islam is. You need governments and police officers and government agencies and so on to protect people from actual terrorists, people who are actually going to go kill someone, or against groomers who are grooming girls. You need governments to deal with those kinds of things. As far as dealing with the ideology, it is so pathetic and weak. There's a reason they always need to go in the direction of blasphemy laws. There's a reason they need to silence people with cries of Islamophobia and racism. Islam cannot stand up to scrutiny. They're basically shouting from the rooftops, here's our kryptonite. Here's our kryptonite. Here's what we can't stand. Here's what will send us into panic mode. And it's just people still don't do it. People still don't do it. So think about this. If you had the backing to launch a huge crusade, well, guess what? If you had that many people on the same page, all you need to do is start blasting away at the teachings of Islam and it would crumble. I'm always confused by these plans that are like, well, why don't we just take over if you had that much support for your position, you don't need to go on a bloodbath. You don't need to. You could. If you have that many people, you can solve this in other ways other than a bloodbath.
I think that the thing is the interpretation of the question is assuming that it's happening extrajudiciously and outside of state apparatus. If there was a bunch of self-appointed vigilantes going around shouting Deus Vult, attacking mosques, and I'd condemn them. I'd even probably go and defend the mosque. If a group of a mob could never run a crusade, but if, for instance, the Vatican was to take up who's the guy who owns BlackRock? Is it BlackRock? The Blackwater, the mercenary group. The founder of the mercenary group has approached the Pope and said, "Fund me and my colleagues, and we'll go and defend the Christians of Nigeria." Now, if the Pope...
That's a situation I was actually thinking, okay, if you actually had something where you're defending a group of Christians and stopping people from attacking them, yeah, it'd be totally... But it sounds like what this person's talking about is like, hey, let's just go massacre...
I mean, I'm not in favor of mob mindless violence, But if the Pope was to go, actually, the Christians of Nigeria really need my help. I've got an army to defend me. How could I possibly deny Christians in Nigeria and other places an army to defend them? Yes, I will organize the funding for, I think his name's Eric Prince, or for Blackwater to go and defend persecuted Christians. And I'll encourage the international community and the international church to support it and put it under the umbrella of the activity of the Vatican State with the necessary controls. I would support the Pope in making such a decision. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see.
I'd cheer him on.
Is it difficult bashing Islam when Isa Kabir is in your stream? Can't believe such a nice person believes in that. God bless you and Bob.
Who's Isa Kabir?
He's a Sufi Muslim. No, Isa's super laid back. You can make fun of Muhammad. Just wasn't doing it as much when Isa was there. So he's a Sufi Muslim. He's super nice and laid back. And even if I'm making fun of Muhammad, he's pretty chill. Yeah, he's pretty cool.
I've met a lot of nice Sufis. Yeah.
Is Bob a practicing Catholic?
So is Bob a practicing? It depends what you mean by Catholic. If you mean a Christian, yes. If you mean a Roman Catholic, no.
So in your faith, if you wanted him to be a Roman Catholic, he's not.
Yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of people they get caught up on these denominational labels. I'm ecumenical. I don't really care about denominational labels. My spirituality is Catholic. A lot of my positions theologically are Catholic. I'm certainly not a Roman Catholic, but I fully, but I'm not precious about it either. I've got a lot of respect for evangelicals, a lot of respect for Pentecostals, a lot of respect for Orthodox, and I really don't care about denominations. What I care about is that people love Jesus and follow Jesus.
Let's see. Please ask Bob to found and lead some sort of Christian group which requires membership in the UK. He is the leader us younger males are desperate for. You got it right there, Bob.
Nope. that my job is to try and encourage the future leaders of the church to do that.
So
And that's where we've got. That's where, David. That's where me and you have got to concentrate our energies on the next generation, the upcoming leaders of the church.
So Jordan, he just said, "Hey, that's on you." You're saying,
Basically.
you're saying you're the younger males. So he's saying you guys do it.
We've got to encourage. We've got to build for the church of the future, and it is about who forms the leaders of the future in this battle for what kind of church emerges in this next generation, is who controls the formation of such leadership, So yeah, that and my job is to try and influence that discussion.
Would you vote for Nick Tenconi from UKIP? What are your thoughts on him?
My thoughts on Nick is that he is a Christian brother who's got the right intention, but he needs to go deeper into his faith. And my voting preferences would go Christian People's Alliance first. If I couldn't find the Christian People Alliance to vote for, then I'd vote for Ben Habib's, I think they're called the Advance Party. If I couldn't vote for Ben Habib's party, I'd vote for Nigel Farage's Reform. If I couldn't vote for Nigel Farage's Reform, then I'd vote for Nick Tenconi's UKIP. And if I couldn't vote for that party, I probably wouldn't vote. Yeah, he just needs to go deeper in his faith. He isn't as deep in his faith that he needs to be to carry forward the project that he wants to carry forward.
Yeah, not deep in a zoot sense, everyone. Just be clear on that. Where do we see these ideas in the Bible? Seems to be mostly about living under unchristian authority. It's weird that people think.
Yeah, it's because. Go on.
Oh, no. I'm just saying it's still weird to me, and it sounds like it's weird to you that you got people who are just like, hey, if the Bible does not say this, then it cannot play a role in Christianity or what Christians do. It's like, okay, the Bible doesn't say post super chats on YouTube, right?
Yeah, Rebecca. Yeah. Where does it say post a super chat on the YouTube?
Well, you're being unbiblical. What is this?
And where is your biblical evidence for this unchristian authority? I want the Bible reference. No, the reality is, for those who might be thinking like Rebecca and is it Paleo, the other guy, is that just because I haven't quoted lots of Bible verses doesn't mean that my idea isn't rooted in Scripture. Like, if you want to sit down and talk about why, there's plenty of discussion about that on my channel. And also I hold regular Q&As, and I'm very happy to talk to people like that to show where these ideas are in Scripture. But ultimately, it doesn't need a proof text. It doesn't need a single verse. What it needs is an understanding of the meta-narrative of the story. So I'll quickly run through it, and a lot of it is covered in part one, so I'll do this really quick. The Bible describes us as people who are brought together in a nation of priests who offer up their souls and bodies in living sacrifice to the Lord their God to establish God's kingdom on earth so that God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, when you apply that narrative to your life, it has to impact your politics, your economics, your society, and your culture. You can't say Jesus is Lord, but then say he's not Lord of my politics, or that he's not Lord of my economics, or that he's not Lord of my cultural practices. But if he is Lord of all of these things, then that means you have an agenda that is Christian, and I'm just encouraging you to live that out. So actually, these are ideas that are biblical, because you can't say Jesus is Lord and disagree with them. You might argue with me about how they're expressed, and that's a legitimate debate for us to have. But you certainly can't argue that you can't argue that Jesus is Lord, but he's not Lord of my politics.
Bob needs to get, I think you got the name backwards, Raymond Ibrahim and David Betts on.
I am going to have Raymond Ibrahim on. Me and him are going to do nice. A special We're going to do a special in the run-up to Hallowmas, celebrating the saints and martyrs that have fought and died, in the church's great struggle with Sharia law and Islam.
Surah 9, 128 attributes 2 divine names to Momo. No, you need to
I'll have to look at that.
No, you need to be careful with that. I think it's calling him kind and merciful. That's not the same as like Allah is. Like you can say someone is merciful, and that's not a divine name. You can say someone speaks the truth. That's different from saying someone is the truth, right? That would be reserved for Allah.
You could say someone's truthful, but you wouldn't say that they are the truth.
Yep. Hey, Bob, did you mention the Christian economics app you and the other guy designed?
Yep, I did. It's called the Christian Economy app. You can download it, though, to be fair, it is having some glitches at the moment because it only got released this month. But we're stitching those glitches up and it will be up and running properly. But yes, you can download it if you want to.
Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock.
I think I meant the guy in charge of Blackwater, the mercenary group.
Blackwater. Okay. We should campaign for the Korean bacon guy for prime minister. That guy's pretty funny.
Yeah, again, not really a serious suggestion, but I suppose he gave you £5. So.
And here we have from Mosh, unrelated. What's your football team, Bob? We'll close out with this.
I hate football. I'm not a football fan. I'm totally in favour of women's sports, and I think women should play them. I'm a rugby guy, and so I support Scotland.
Hey, that was like the most that I agreed with Bob on a lot of what he said, but I agreed with him more on that than on anything else. Even more so than having children. Yes.
Yeah.
Soccer's a women's sport, and
yeah, play a man's sport.
Yeah. So that would be either rugby or American football. Everyone, you heard it here. Living by the sword and dying by it, I get, but what about those that don't and still die by it? Living by the sword and dying by it, I get, but what about those that don't and still die by it? Oh, you're saying other people don't. I mean, to be clear, what Jesus is pointing out there is if you live a life of violence, that's what you're going to get. That doesn't mean that people who don't live a life of violence aren't going to be on the receiving end of violence there. Yeah,
that's true. And that's exactly what happened to ISIS. They lived by the sword and they died by the sword, proving Jesus's teachings.
Yeah, and as far as people who are on the receiving end of violence, like the Nigerian Christians Bob was talking about, then you should come up with ways to protect them.
Yeah, and that's not living by the sword. To be clear, defending people from unjust violence is not living by the sword. Jesus is talking about using the sword to achieve your ends in a way that undermines the fact that we should be moved from love and hope and faith. And it's about the use and abuse of power for its own sake, which is what Jesus is undermining when he says, my kingdom is not of this world. For if my followers were of this world, they would rise up to defend me. But using the sword for a just cause is not living by the sword. It is simply using the sword for justice and living by justice. Because justice would mean that you wouldn't use the sword where you don't have to use the sword.
As for my earlier question, so this was about the crusade, I'd rather it not be a mob. Just heard the details of so many Muslim rape cases. I can't get rid of the need for revenge. Cases exist of girls gang raped 5 times in one night. Yeah, but even what you're talking about now, that wouldn't be a crusade. What you'd say is they need to be much more serious in dealing with these problems. So that would involve arrests, taking the claims of the girls seriously, which they didn't for years, but arrests, punishments, deportations, all of that stuff. So,
but I would also say that as Christians, we've got to guard our heart against revenge. Get rid of I can't get rid of the need for revenge. Brother, if that's the case, then you need to stop following these stories. if your heart is being filled up with so much bitterness and anger and resentment that your mind is being consumed by revenge, then you need to take a step back and you need to pray and you need to work on yourself. Because whilst we absolutely should pursue justice against these Muslim rape gangs, we must not do it from a place of anger, revenge, or bitterness. It must come from a place of love, a love for the victims primarily, love for any other possible potential victims that we want to, the love of our neighbor, but also love for the criminals themselves, who need to stop heaping further judgments on themselves by carrying out further injustices. They need to be restrained, because for every crime they commit is another thing that they're going to answer for before God. And so it is an act of mercy to restrain their evil as you reduce the judgment that they're heaping upon themselves.
And last one here, teach David the Messiah dilemma, Bob. What's that?
Oh, it's the fact that it's part of a wider argument that I've made on my channel, where I just point out that Muslims don't have a clear understanding of why they call Jesus the Messiah. If you go and study it,
they have no clue.
You go and study it. There's 1,001 reasons why they call Jesus the Messiah, which clearly demonstrates that it's theology that they're making up post hoc.
Yep.
They've got this term. They've borrowed this term from a matrix that they don't understand, and post hoc, they're then trying to rationalize why it's there. Mm-hmm. But obviously, because they place Isa within Israel, call him the Messiah, and say he is the Messiah of Israel, then that means that term has a definite meaning and a definite consequence. And the Islamic Jesus looks nothing like what that historical Messiah needs to be, mm-hmm. In terms of for him to be the Messiah. The Prophet Isa of the Qur'an in no way looks like anything of what the Messiah would have expected to have looked like according to the Jewish religion.
You could actually make a list of those things. So they say Jesus is the Messiah. They have no clue. And so they have to figure it out later on when given an Islamic perspective, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. Same thing with calling Jesus the word of Allah. They'll come up with explanations for why he's called the word of Allah. But they have to make things up because it makes no sense for Jesus to be the word of Allah. It's clear where he got that idea from, but it makes no sense in Islam, so they have to try to explain it away. Same thing with calling the book of the Christians the Injil. Injil is an Arabic transliteration, ultimately from the Greek euangelion, but euangelion wasn't just any type of good. So one, they already have to figure out why it was in Greek, why it has a Greek name for the book that Jesus had, but also euangelion means good news, but it wasn't just any kind of good news. It was certain kinds of good news. And it was good news of like a new emperor being taking over the empire who was going to bring peace and so on. A tremendous military victory over the forces of chaos and evil and so on. That would be the Evangelion. You spread the news that this tremendous victory had been won. That's its Greco-Roman context. But in its religious context, it is used in the Old Testament in the Greek translation of Isaiah, where it referred to God delivering his people from captivity and returning to his people and being enthroned over them. Guess what? Those are the religious meanings of Evangelion. Those are the Greco-Roman meanings of Evangelion. All of those uses make perfect sense in how Christians are using that term. None of them make sense as far as Islam is concerned. Where's this new king taking over? Where's this tremendous military defeat of the forces of evil? None of that makes any sense. Where's God bringing his people out of captivity? The Islamic message is Jesus came along, he preached, he won a few followers, and then God took him away, and then it all got corrupted.
Yeah, and it gets worse than that. It gets worse than that. If you look at the Islamic Jesus of the Quran, there's no reason for the Jews to kill him. He does nothing to deserve death. So why would they try to
believe in
crucify
God,
him?
everybody. Believe in God. Oh, we have to kill him.
Yeah.
Really?
Believe in God and obey the Torah.
Yeah.
You know,
Shame
it's
on
like,
you. We must kill
yeah,
him.
like there's just no Jewish reason to kill that Messiah. And as Bart Ehrman said, if your description of Jesus's life does not adequately explain his death, then you've got a problem in your description of Jesus, and that's the problem that the Muslim Quranic Jesus has. So yeah, that's the Messiah dilemma of the
Yep.
Quran.
Yep. I guess we can make a lot of dilemmas about all this stuff. Last one here.
Oh, yeah.
My concern is young Christian men making the loyal and repentant women at their church into an effigy of liberal women and taking petty revenge on them. At my own church, a man said he would take my vote away.
Not entirely sure what's going on there. I think that, you know, I just want to emphasize the importance of people working on their own emotional intelligence. Like, everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how emotionally intelligent you are, keep working on your own emotional intelligence. This kind of smacks of, you know, what do you call these people? There's a name for them. They're kind of, they're celibate, but they're not by choice. And
the incels, involuntary celibates. Yeah,
it kind of smacks of incel. The question kind of smacks of incel sort of culture, and I think it probably speaks to very few men in the church, to be honest, or maybe the Andrew Tate kind of brand of man. But it is it's a very small minority of men, and you know, all I can say is everybody just work on your emotional intelligence as a blanket statement.
And finally, here you have your buddy Pain of Reality again. Says Bob's ideas were popular in medieval Europe. Jews were not allowed to own property. This is exactly what he is proposing. So you heard it here, folks. Bob is proposing Jews by proposing that Christians actually have a bank so that they're not under the control of other people. He's saying Jews should not be allowed to own property. Thank you, Pain of Reality. You're definitely sane
out
and
of touch
wise.
with reality. Like, I mean, it's
Pain
just the hysteria. It's the pain of reality, and I can't grasp reality.
Yeah. Bob's on here like, hey guys, because of the demographics, we need to have kids, and we need to make sure young people are trained in apologetics and polemics. Oh, you think that Jews shouldn't own property? How dare you? Oh,
never even crossed my lips.
Take the reality out of your name there, Pain of Reality. Call it pain of insanity or pain of delusion or something like this.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. Final words, Bob.
My final words are this. You know, some of you again are agree with what I've said. Some of you again are agree with some of what I've said, and not other bits. Take the bits that you agree with and run with them. Yeah. Take the bits that you understand and run with those bits. If you don't understand something, research it more. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the right conversation going in the church. So take what you understand, run with it. Take what you don't understand, research it, and try to implement and embody as much of it as you can, and encourage others to do the same.
Yeah, and as far as taking bits, meaning Christians are a body.
Yes.
Not every task falls on every person, and whatever you can do, it helps, right? Like even if you just take learning apologetics, learning polemics, having a kit, those are all parts. Those are all parts of things that people can do.
If it just means that you don't buy any more halal meat, again, you know, take what you can and run with it.
Amen. All right, everyone. So you've got links to all of Bob's channels and so on, so you can follow him there. And again, we have a link to part 1 of our discussion, which was a couple months ago. But if you want to check that out, you can. Apart from that, I will be live in 90 minutes with Robert Spencer as we talk about Zohran Mamdani, so Pain of Reality. You're going to love that discussion. Come over.
Just one more passing blow to Pain of Reality, who said that nothing of what I said was scriptural. Does he think that when I said to people that we shouldn't act from a place of revenge, but that we should act from a place of love hope
Yes,
and faith.
yes.
But that's not scriptural.
How dare
Honestly, some people. Anyway, it was a pleasure being with you, David, as always. And, hopefully AP can join us again for some future chit-chat.
Turks.
Yeah.
right.
We love them.
Thanks for watching,
Especially
everyone.
Hat and Tash.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Good night.
Yeah, two good Turks. Catch y'all later.